Previously on episode 1. Winifred was grateful to Mary for calming her a bit after her fight with Sarah. The door slam upstairs had hurt, but it wasn't anything Winifred hadn't been through before with her. It was the fact that the fight indeed was her own fault. Had she just been more mindful of the soul Sarah was caring for in that blasted task, then perhaps she could have made up for her mistake the slightest bit. They were in this position because of her selfishness that night, and she was only making things worse. Cobbler, her jolteon, laid his head on her lap and smiled a little at her. Winifred stroked his spiky fur with a small smile on her face. "At least you don't think I'm a terrible person," she sighed. "I'm happy thou art by my side, Cobbler." "Jolt!" he barked a little. "Come, Cobbler, let us retire for the evening." Winifred walked upstairs to her room with Cobbler leading the way. She laid down to sleep, and he hopped up in the bed with her. She closed her eyes, mind still reeling from everything that had happened between the task she had completed and the mistakes she made. "Cobbler, be a dear and close the shutters," Winifred muttered. "'Tis far too bright." Her eyes snapped open a second later. She knew she wasn't in her room. "Cobbler!" Her jolteon was gone, and as she ran past a mirror, she saw her young self staring back at her. "It's happened again!" she gasped. "Cobbler is gone! I'm not in my room! My sisters are missing, and I'll bet Mother is waiting downstairs for me. I need to get my hands on that wretched box and make it tell me what's happening." Winifred hurried downstairs without a second thought. "Oh, good morning, sweetheart." Yep, there she was. "Good morning, Mother," Winifred greeted her warmly. "Already in a hurry to visit Professor Elm, I see," her mother smiled. "Of course. Well, I know today is a big day for you, so I got you a little something to celebrate getting your first Pokemon." Her mother held out a beautiful green bag to Winifred, who took it with a soft smile. She pulled the bag over her shoulders, letting the pouch swing at her side. "Thank you, Mother. It is beautiful." "You're welcome, dear. Now you better run along before all the Pokemon are gone." Winifred left the house and ran right into a young man with a Meryl by his side. "Hey, Winnie," he grinned. "Where's the fire?" "I've no time to chat, boy. I have somewhere to be," she shouted, and the boy laughed out loud, causing Winifred to narrow her eyes a little. "Always in a hurry, always aggressive, yet you always make time for your old buddy Ethan." So instead of a rival this time, she had a friend. Child might come in handy. Okay, I won't hold you up today. You've got to pick your first Pokemon, after all. Head on over to the lab, but I'll be waiting to see who you pick." "Yes, of course. Where is the lab?" she asked, and Ethan cackled. "Nervous, huh? It's right over there." He pointed her in the right direction, then patted her shoulder. "Don't worry so much. You'll pick the right one." His kindness touched her. "Thank thee, Ethan," she said, then hurried over to the lab, darting through the door. "Ah, right on time, Winifred. Actually a bit early," said the man in the back of the room. This must have been Professor Elm. "Are you ready for your big day?" "I think so," she replied, approaching him. "Well, you're the first to arrive today, so you get the first pick of the Pokemon. There's another boy scheduled for later, but he seems to be running a bit late. Once you get your Pokemon, you'll be eligible to take on the gym challenge. Is that something that might interest you?" "Yes, it is," Winifred said confidently. She knew she'd likely have to fight the gyms again in order to earn her way back to her sisters. "Great! I can register you from here so the gym leaders know you're a challenger," Professor Elm said. "But first," he opened 3 Pokeballs and out popped 3 Pokemon. "Choose your partner." Winifred read the nameplates of each one: Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile. She recognized Chikorita as the baby form of her old friend Emerald. As she went to reach for it, it used the leaf on its head to slap her hand away, and it laughed at her flinch. This one would not do. She looked over the Totodile, who started chattering and dancing around, trying to impress her. The Pokemon reminded her of Sarah, which was nice, but she couldn't train that much energy. Lastly, she looked at Cyndaquil, who looked back at her. She held her hand out, and the Pokemon sniffed it, then sat up and sniffed her hair. It was attracted to the red color. Cyndaquil backed up, and red embers lit up on its back. It was as if it was trying to tell Winifred he was like her. "I choose Cyndaquil," Winifred said with a smile. She liked the fiery personality. "Something told me you might. It matches your personality perfectly," Professor Elm said, and handed her the Pokeball. Would you like to name him Cyndaquil? How dost thou fancy the name Wildfire? She asked him, and he exclaimed excitedly, Wildfire it is. All right, it's settled. Wildfire is your Pokemon. Now, I do like to study the relationships between Pokemon and their trainers, so I ask that you keep him out of his Pokeball as much as you can. Let him stroll by your side as you travel, and do the same with the other Pokemon you eventually catch, he requested, and Winifred nodded as she picked up her Cyndaquil in her arms. Now, I'll get you registered for his computer beeped, and he checked the message he received. Shoot. I need to get you registered, but my friend Mr. Pokemon has a new discovery he wants to give me. Winifred, this would be a great adventure for you and Wildfire. Would you mind going to get whatever it is my friend has? So long as I am in the gym challenge when I come back, she said, and Professor Elm laughed. You got it. Best let your mother know where you're going. So Winifred informed her mother of the errand she was running. Her mother gave her a device called a Pokegear that allowed her to receive voices. She had seen something like this before in the world of the living, but she had no idea how to work this Pokegear. That said, she and Wildfire really enjoyed their trek to Cherry Grove City, having a battle or two along the way. Wildfire was feisty and competitive when it came to fights, and Winifred liked that. She also enjoyed walking with him as he was determined to keep up with her. When they reached Mr. Pokemon's house just past the city, the sun was beginning to set. Mr. Pokemon was jovial, kind, hospitable, and his cheeriness was almost disgusting. Even Wildfire was annoyed by his energy. Yet, when he handed over the Pokemon egg, Winifred could tell he was a professional after all. As she was leaving, someone else dropped by to see Mr. Pokemon. Professor Oak! She gasped. It was her last proctor. Ah, a young trainer, he replied. I take it you are a fan of mine. He didn't remember her. Winifred recalled that everyone's memories were wiped when she left, but she didn't think Professor Oak would be that way. My, a Cyndaquil is a rare Pokemon to own indeed. You know, you might like one of these to help you catch more rare ones like this along the way. He gave her a Pokedex. Winifred thanked him abruptly, then bolted for the door with Wildfire at her side. She opened her Pokedex immediately. All right, cursed box. Tell me where my Jolteon is, she shouted at it. Hello, Winifred Sanderson. It seems you already know how this works, it said. Of course I do, you buffoon. I have to beat the champion to leave this place. My Pokemon can die if they lose. Wildfire yelped when she said that, but she calmed him. And I can only catch one new Pokemon per route. Now where is Cobbler? I'm impressed by your memory. Sarah is usually the one with the total recall. Your Jolteon is safe. He is just in a sort of stasis. Should you be able to find him in this region, he can help you on your journey. If not, he'll be waiting for you back in Purgatory. Well, there's that at least. I take it there are 8 of these gyms, 4 elite trainers, and 1 champion again, she asked it. Yes, it replied. Since you know so much, I'll leave you to it. It went silent, only for her Pokegear to ring and scare Winifred half to life. She fumbled with it for a minute until Wildfire poked the top button with his nose. Oh, Winifred, you have to get back here. The lab's been robbed. One of the Pokemon was stolen. Hurry! Professor Elm babbled. I will be there as soon as I can, she replied. Was Team Rocket back? They were the only ones bold enough to steal a Pokemon. Come, Wildfire, we must hurry. Winifred and Wildfire started running back down the route towards Cherry Grove. It was getting dark, and Wildfire lit up his back with flames to light their way. Winifred was surprised by his quick thinking, and she couldn't help but smile. He kept running, leading the way through the dark, but he was starting to huff and puff. Winifred quickly scooped him up, kept his back facing away from her so she didn't get burned, and she carried him. Wildfire laid his head on her shoulder in relief as he kept pushing the flames. Once they crossed into the town, he extinguished his fire and Winifred took him to the Pokemon Center. There were doctors there to help him recover. He felt better after a little time with the nurse, and they set out again, despite the warnings of going out at night. Winifred ran right smack into a teenage boy who knocked her down. Oh, geez, sorry, he said. He went to help her up, but Wildfire lit up his flames in warning. Hey, it's okay. It was an accident. Wildfire, calm thyself, Winifred said, getting back up. Apologies for running into thee. Hey, you didn't know, he said. You okay? I am unharmed, she replied. You seem to be in quite the hurry. Everything all right? He asked her. Apparently there was a... She gasped when she got a good look at his face. "It's you! Do we know each other? Thy name is... She had to think, then it hit her. Max! Yeah, how'd you know? Max asked. She saw his trainer card on the ground, then pointed. Oh, shoot, thanks for spotting that. He picked it up. You seem to know me, but I don't really know you, kid. My name is... Winifred paused for a moment. Perhaps it would be best not to agitate this young man just yet. Winnie. Nice to meet you, Winnie, Max said and offered his hand to shake. She hesitated, then did so. You've got a pretty strong-looking Cyndaquil there. Would you want to battle? I just got a Pokemon too, and I would love to give him a test run. I could take the time to beat you, she replied, and Max laughed. All right, I like the spunk. They took battle positions, and Max sent out Totodile. Wildfire took the stage and lit his back up intimidatingly. Totodile was the same one from the lab because it was already hopping around. Max had Totodile use Leer to lower Wildfire's defenses, but Winifred went straight for the damage. Wildfire's tackle attack did a fair amount of damage. Totodile kept trying to lower Cyndaquil's defense, but he kept attacking and won in the end. Max gave his Totodile some words of encouragement before returning him to his Pokeball. Good fight, Winnie. Wildfire's impressive. Hope we run into each other again, he said, then went into the Pokemon Center. Winifred was perplexed at how nice this boy was being to her, but he didn't recognize her due to the younger appearance she boasted. This disguise was truly a blessing. She collected Wildfire in her arms. He lit his back, and they ran all the way back to New Barktown where she started. There was an officer outside the lab with Professor Elm and Ethan when she got back. Winifred, thank goodness! There was a robbery and one of my Pokemon was stolen, he babbled again. Winifred had a thought. I saw a boy with the Totodile from this lab. I battled him hours ago. His name was Max and... Him? Oh no. He came by a couple hours after you left and chose his Pokemon. Totodile was assigned to him, Professor Elm told her. It was the Chikorita that was stolen. Winifred spotted a large leaf behind a tree and heard snickering. I do not think it was stolen. She pointed at the tree, and the officer walked over. He retrieved the Chikorita, who was laughing up a storm. I could tell it was a miscreant when I chose my Pokemon. I feel like a fool, Professor Elm said with a sigh. This one is going to be a handful. He turned to Winifred. Thanks for the help, and sorry for making you rush back here. I got you registered for the gym challenge before Chikorita pulled that prank. He gave her a badge case, which she had no intention of using when she had her cloak. Good luck out there. Professor, Winifred called him back and held out the egg. The item you sent me to fetch? Oh, I'd almost forgotten. Thank you. He took the egg, then left her and Ethan alone. So you chose Cyndaquil, Ethan said. It fits for you. 2 fiery personalities will cause quite the storm during your gym challenge, but you're going to need some more Pokemon. Here! He gave her some Pokeballs, and Winifred knew her test was on. I hope you have a good journey. Thank thee, Ethan. I will see you around, she said, then went home to sleep for the night. The next day, she and Wildfire officially set out on their journey. Her first stop on her map was Violet City. On the route outside New Barktown, she caught a Hoot-Hoot named Hooty. Above, on Route 46, she caught a Geodude named Gaia. Then they pressed forward to Route 30, where a spider Pokemon popped out. Specially selected for Winifred Sanderson. You may catch this Pokemon and use it legally, beeped her Pokedex. Thou wilt make a fine addition to our little team. Winifred weakened the Pokemon and caught it. Spinarak has been registered to your Pokedex. Arachne? Welcome. Winifred smiled. Nim the Rattata joined the team on the same route, since Arachne was a special encounter. Winifred was pretty happy that she was getting so many Pokemon right off, unlike last time. This seemed to be easier so far. She walked up to Dark Cave and caught a Zubat that she named Mavis. One last Pokemon she caught on Route 31 excited her a bit as she caught Lorium, the Bellsprout. She finally made it to Violet City and was told there was a great place to train in the Sprout Tower. She decided to visit the Pokemon Center and rest her team first. It was there she met a man giving away Pokemon eggs for the right passwords. Winifred smirked and used a spell on the man to hand over all the eggs regardless of what she said, but her Pokedex caught on to her trick and cut her off at 1. a Mareep egg. Winifred shuffled her team, then took the tower head-on and caught a ghastly inside that she called Trickster. Once she battled her way to the top, she found Max finishing up a battle with the Sprout Tower leader. He'd won. He smiled at Winifred as he was walking out. "Hey, good luck in there. He's a pretty tough opponent. Maybe we'll get to battle again later," he told her. "Perhaps we will," she replied, then approached the leader. "You seek a battle, child?" he asked. "I do. My Pokemon have worked hard to reach thee," she told him. He examined her Pokeballs and nodded. "I believe that." "So, show me what they can do," he said. Winnie's Rattata took on his Bellsprout, which decided to set up stat-boosting moves. Nim used Quick Attack over and over, dealing speedy blows to the plant. Even when Vine Whip hit him, he withstood the impact and dealt the finishing blow. His second Bellsprout met the same fate at the hands of Nim. When Hoot Hoot came in, Winifred gave him some rest and sent in Wildfire. Wildfire had a hard battle between a stronger opponent and hypnosis attacks, but in the end he edged out the owl and learned Ember to boost. Winifred was congratulated on her victory and given the TM for Flash as a reward. Now she needed to train up her team for the Violet City Gym. Wildfire, Nim, Mavis, Gaia, and Laurium. As she was training her team, the Mareep egg hatched and gave birth to Tonitrue, the Mareep. Winifred had her 6 Pokemon, and she was ready to take on the first gym. And now! Previously on episode 2, Winifred trained her team well, and she was thrilled with the spunk they were showing. Newly hatched Tonitrue was a force to be reckoned with, and he loved it when she let him have a jolt of her own lightning to charge him up. He was quite the spirited little sheep. Winnie was learning a lot about her Pokemon as they trained. Nim was her little firecracker, as he was always ready to fight anything that moved, but he also liked sitting on her lap when he got tired. She really liked her Rattata, despite the bad memories it brought up when she thought about the names children called her when she was a kid. He actually made her feel a little better about herself. Gaia was the rock of the team, and not just because of her typing. She encouraged everyone to do their best, even her trainer. She helped her teammates work on their moves by being their punching bag since her defensive stats were so high. Mavis and Laurium bonded over their mutual poison typing and liked to spar with each other when they weren't sharing berries or napping together. Winifred couldn't help chuckling at the budding romance between her bat and her plant, but it was kind of cute. As for Wildfire, he was her constant companion. He stayed by her side whenever he wasn't battling, warmed tea for her, and napped with his head resting on her knee. Winifred loved him very much. She knew she might as well make the best of her situation, since she was going to be here for a while. That night, as she settled into her room at the Pokemon Center, Wildfire climbed into bed with her and curled up beside her on one side, and Nim popped up by her head and laid down. Tonitrue actually had a boost from Gaia as he took a place behind Winifred's knees. Mavis, Laurium, and Gaia slept on the rug by the bed. Winifred didn't mind it when Cobbler slept with her, but 3 Pokemon was almost too much. If she didn't sleep well, this would have to change. She slept like the dead. The next day, she entered Violet City Gym and was shot upwards by means of a strange lift. She let Tonitrue and Gaia lay waste to the gym trainers as she realized this was a flying-type gym. When she approached the gym leader, his cocky air rubbed Winifred the wrong way immediately. "I take it you're after my badge?" he asked, and before she could open her mouth, he held up a hand. No need to answer, it was rhetorical. You and your Pokemon clearly do not respect the majesty of the flying type. Coming in here and flinging rocks and lightning bolts. I, Falkner, will show you that my flying type Pokemon are stronger than your type advantages. I'll have your badge and but a few moves, Winifred told him. Go, Pidgey! Gaia, bring pain to this Pidgey. Pidgey used Sand Attack, lowering Gaia's accuracy, causing her to miss Rock Throw. Winifred had her try again as Pidgey used Tackle, tickling the Geodude. Gaia hit her mark that time and knocked out the tiny bird. Pidgeotto was the last opponent, and it smacked Gaia with Gust, causing very little damage to the rock type, but it disoriented her enough to miss Rock Throw. Gaia recovered long enough to take another Gust, but this time she smashed Pidgeotto with her rock-type attack, plunging it into yellow. Gust slammed into Gaia again, spinning her round and round. "Gaia, use rock throw and follow the wind's pattern," Winifred shouted over the vortex. Gaia heard her and obeyed. She charged her attack, swung alongside the vortex current, and slammed her power into the Pidgeotto. The winds petered out as the flying type hit the floor, and Gaia flexed her rocky muscles. Winifred smirked at Faulkner as Gaia floated over for a pat on the head. Faulkner exhaled angrily, called his bird back to its ball, then walked over to her. "How many turns was that?" Winifred asked him. "I count 5. "You beat my father's beloved bird Pokemon," he grumbled. "Well, that explains everything." Winifred rolled her eyes. "Thy chances would have been better had thou used Pokemon of thine own. Borrowing does not build a proper relationship. After all, my Gaia here took down both of your Pokemon by herself, because she trained hard under my guidance. Perhaps you should consider the same thing for your gym." I never thought of it like that," he admitted, then held out his hand. "The Zephyr badge is yours." Winifred took her first gym badge in the Johto region and pinned it to her cloak. 7 to go. "You taught me a thing or two today, miss. I'm pleased to have battled you." "Farewell, then," Winifred said, not wanting to speak with this brat any longer. She took the lift down and exited the gym, only to get a call from Professor Elm, saying they wanted the egg she had fetched for him to go with her. She met up with the professor's assistant and took possession of the egg. As she left, she could feel someone watching her from a distance and spotted a young woman in a kimono. They made eye contact, and the young woman smiled at her, then gave a nod before walking away. "That was most odd," Winifred said, then went to place the egg in the meadow for now with Arachne and Trickster. She set off for the next route, where she received the HM for Rock Smash. She walked down to a place called the Ruins of Alph, where she felt mysterious power charge her magic. Winifred spent a little time here before heading off to the route she had started for in the first place. She caught a whooper named Blueberry here, then went downwards and met a fisherman who gave her a fishing rod. She hiked back to the ruins and decided to catch a Magikarp here, which she named Pirano. She knew what he could become. It took until sundown for her to reach the Pokemon Center outside of a cave where she rested for the night. 3 Pokemon on the rug, and 3 in the bed with her. The next day, she ventured into Union Cave, where she caught a Sandshrew named, what else, Sandy. She came out the other side and caught Banta the Hoppip, then proceeded towards Azalea Town, when something caught her ear. She ducked behind a tree as she heard someone berating a terrified man. When she peeked to see who was causing the ruckus, she gasped upon seeing the big red R on the man's chest. "So, Team Rocket really is back," she muttered. "I only guessed when Chikorita went missing, but my intuition was spot on." The man ran off, but an elderly man came running after the rocket grunt and chased him into a well. She heard a painful yelp moments later. "Well, that sounded unpleasant, but this is not my problem." Wildfire tugged at her skirt and pointed at the well. "Wildfire, what is it?" He babbled for a moment, pointing vehemently at the well. "You want me to go in there and fight those goons?" He nodded. "Oh, very well. At least it will be good training for the lot of you." She begrudgingly made her way into the depths of what was called Slowpoke Well. The old man who had chased the Team Rocket grunt had fallen unconscious after falling from the ladder. She checked on him later. She laid waste to the Team Rocket grunts in her way, her team fighting with all they had. She noticed there were Slowpokes all over the place, missing their tails. The grunts had been cutting them off to sell. Once the grunts had been defeated, Winifred walked up to a young man in a Team Rocket uniform, who looked like he might pull out a knife and stab someone at any moment. Normally, she'd like someone like this, but her Cyndaquil was burning up at the sight of him. The young man looked down at the Pokemon and smirked. "So, you found a new trainer, have you, Cyndaquil?" he asked, and Wildfire's flames grew stronger. "Oh, come now. Surely you've forgiven me for abandoning you." "You were his trainer?" Winifred inquired. "For a long time, but he did not like how I trained my Pokemon. He especially didn't like it when I joined this organization, so I left him in New Bark Town." "How needlessly cruel," Winifred commented. "Wildfire has been nothing but loyal and kind since I chose him to be my partner." "That is his weakness," huffed the young man. "I, Proton, will prove it." "No. It is his strength, and we will show you, Winifred said. Zubat, take down this pitiful fire type. Wildfire, get them. Wildfire ran into the fight. Ember attack. His flames seared the bat, who retaliated with a leech-life attack that barely tickled. This caught Proton's attention. Wildfire used Ember again and knocked out his opponent. Coughing was the second Pokemon that came into battle. Winifred knew these things had a habit of exploding, so she switched Wildfire out for Gaia. Wildfire didn't want to leave battle, but he listened to Winifred. Gaia avoided the poison gas attack, then hit Coughing with Rock Throw. She dodged again and hit with Rock Throw, took a tackle attack, then finished it off. Proton was shocked at the strength of his opponent and how well the Cyndaquil fought. Cyndaquil, forgive me. I'm impressed by your power. You have grown strong, he said. What say you come back to me? Wildfire spat an ember at him, then walked over to Winifred's side and planted his feet. He has no time for a mere peasant like thee. Now, you need to leave these slowpoke alone, Winifred said, or we will fight until you stop breathing. This isn't over. You won the battle, but I assure you the war is only beginning, he growled, then made a run for it. Winifred looked down at her Cyndaquil, who was still flaming mad. She knelt down and stroked his head gently. She calmed him enough for his flames to go out, and he hugged her legs. She rubbed his back as the old man came stumbling in. Did you drive out Team Rocket? He asked her. We did, Winifred replied. Remarkable. A mere child taking on such villains. Haven't seen anything like that since. He trailed off. Anyway, what is your name? Winifred, sir, she replied. Well, Winifred, my name is Kurt. I'm a Pokeball maker and the caretaker of this well. I thank you for stopping those lunatics from harming the Slowpoke further. Their tails fall off once a year to grow new, stronger ones, but cutting them off just because they grow back does not mean the poor dears don't feel pain. For saving them, I'll be happy to take any apricorns you give me and make Pokeballs for you any time, he explained, and Winifred took him up on his offer. Wildfire was still fuming from his encounter with the man who turned out to be his former trainer. Winifred took him to work out some of his aggression in the grass nearby. He fought wild Pokemon for hours to get his anger out, Winifred cheering him on the entire time. He hadn't stopped thinking about the day Proton left him behind since his abandonment. It's why he was trying so hard to get close to Winifred. Yet, Wildfire saw the look in her eyes and felt something he had in a very long time. The love of a trainer. He heard her commands, he listened when she spoke to him kindly, and she pet him every time he walked over to her. Maybe, just maybe, with Winifred he could become the best Pokemon he could be. As he thought about these things, he started to glow. Winifred gasped as she saw her Cyndaquil evolve before her eyes. Quilava has been registered to your Pokedex, beeped her pocket guide. Wildfire! Thou hast evolved so soon, she exclaimed as he came bounding over to her. She caught him in a hug as he leapt. I am proud of thee, and together, if we ever come across those foul Team Rockets again, we'll put them in their places, I promise. You will never answer to those fools again. Wildfire grinned and licked her face. He finally had the right trainer. The training didn't stop as Azalea Town held a gym. Winifred and Wildfire put the team through their paces, and another surprise graced them. Tonatru, after a throwdown with some angry Zubat, glowed brightly and evolved too. Flaffy has been registered to your Pokedex. Tonatru had been following Wildfire around since he hatched. When Wildfire evolved, he felt compelled to grow strong enough to do the same. Winifred was proud of not only the pair of them, but all of her Pokemon. She knew things were looking bright as she slept in the Pokemon Center, in a much more cramped bed with 2 evolved Pokemon and 1 Nim on her pillow. And now, previously on episode 3, Winifred took her team to the Azalea Gym and read the plaque. Bugsy, the Bug-type Master. Bug-types stood no chance against her Pokemon, and Winifred went in with high confidence. The gym trainers fell one after the other, and she approached the young man. He was practically a child. Well, someone has skills to reach me this quickly, Bugsy said. Or a Geodude and a Quilava, Winifred muttered. Shall we proceed with this battle? Right to it, huh? All right, then. Scyther, give this girl a taste of your blades. Bugsy sent in a powerful bug type. Wildfire, use Ember! Scyther struck first with Quick Attack, dealing a decent chunk of damage, but Wildfire's Ember took away just as much from his opponent. Scyther hit again and brought Wildfire down to yellow health. Wildfire's flames burned hotter and brighter on his back, causing Winifred to smirk. You fool! The less health my Quilava has, the more powerful his fire becomes. Oh no! It has the blaze ability! Bugsy gasped. Scyther, retreat! I think not, Winifred laughed. Wildfire, Ember! Wildfire blasted a powerful Ember attack at the bug type before it could move. The Scyther fell and Wildfire let out a battle cry. Bugsy gulped, realizing he led with his ace far too early, and sent in his Metapod. The blazing Quilava blew an Ember at the Pokemon and it fell in one hit. The Kakuna that came in next didn't stand a chance either, and pretty soon, Bugsy was handing over Winifred's second badge, the Hive Badge. I need to look out for Blaze, he said disappointedly. Scyther is usually so fast he can best anything thrown at him. Relying on one's skill is a recipe for certain failure after a while, Winifred told him. You sound as if you speak from experience, he said. One might say that, she sighed. Just keep practicing and maybe you'll best the next trainer who comes through here. Winifred left and decided to let her Pokemon have a little free time in the town. They'd earned it, especially Wildfire, who'd just bested a gym all by himself. He spent his time relaxing in the shade by their side. The other 5 took to playing a game of tag in the meadow. Laurium and Mavis teamed up together to mess with the others, but everyone had fun. When it came time for her Pokemon to be fed, she laid out a plate of berries for each of them. She watched as they enjoyed themselves when someone walked up. Hey, long time no see, Winnie, Max greeted her happily. She practically flinched. Whoa, sorry to scare you. 'Tis all right, she breathed. What art thou doing here? Oh, I just came from the gym. Bugsy wasn't easy to beat. He said you took him out in a few turns, though. Max sat down next to her. Care if my Pokemon join yours for a bit? Do whatever you please, Winifred replied. She didn't like this niceness between the two of them. Max sent out his Croconaw, Ghastly, and Zubat. They made fast friends with Winifred's Pokemon. His Zubat was very interested in Mavis, but Laurium gave him a talking to. Your Bellsprout is awfully protective of your Zubat, he laughed. Laurium fancies Mavis, Winifred confessed with a chuckle. Interesting couple. Max couldn't help laughing again. Would you be up for a battle in a bit? I'd like to test my team against yours. I could take time out of my day to beat you again, she replied. God, you remind me of my little sister. Max shook his head. Their battle commenced with his Ghastly facing Wildfire. Ember hit, but in retaliation, Ghastly used Spite to lower his move PP. It didn't matter too much as the next Ember knocked him out. Croconaw went up against Laurium and concentrated on lowering his speed with Scary Face. Laurium used Vine Whip after every move and knocked out his foe. Zubat faced Tonatru and pulled off a Supersonic to confuse him first. Tonatru came through with a Thunder Shock, almost knocking him out. On the next turn, Zubat used Leech Life, but fell to Thunder Shock. Max rubbed the back of his neck with a defeated smile. Got me again, he winced. Thy focus remains too much on lowering power. Go on the offensive sometimes, Dennison, she told him. You leave yourself open to attacks far too much to expect quick victories. Really, my battles have been kind of long, he puzzled. But once we lower our foe's power, we really hit hard. You will not have the opportunity to hit hard if thy foes are dealing all the blows, she insisted. Next time we battle, I expect a challenge. You're on. Max shook hands with her, then they parted ways. Winifred set off for Ilex Forest, where she caught Turnip the Oddish. She had to help a young man wrangle a pair of Farfetch'd, but at least she was rewarded with the HM for cut. She met a man who taught Nim how to use Headbutt, which she used back in Azalea Town to catch Monica the Heracross. She decided to tackle the hike through the forest the next day, and once again slept in a cramped bed with 3 Pokemon. As she trekked through Ilex Forest, the next day she met up with the lady she spotted in Violet City, the Kimono Girl. Naoko was her name, and she was lost. Winifred was reluctant to take the time to help her find her way out, but the company wasn't appalling. They parted ways on the other side of the forest, and Winifred caught herself a drowsy that she named Drowsy, with a couple of letters changed. She made it to Goldenrod City by the end of the day, and she slept like a log in the center that night. She decided to explore Goldenrod to find the gem and stumbled upon a competition in the radio tower. Winifred did remember quite a bit about this world from her first trial, which ended up winning her the prize. Apparently, she'd been up against the gym leader, Whitney, and she was so bubbly she made Sarah look calm. Winifred's annoyance level spiked as Whitney begged her to come to the gym. She was going there immediately, just to shut the girl up. Nim took out most of the gym trainers by himself, and Winifred approached Whitney. "Oh, you made it! Awesome! I've been hoping someone would provide a challenge for me for once. Nobody expects normal types to be so strong. No one is ever good enough to beat me, so don't go crying to your mom when I beat you real bad," Whitney babbled. "This is going to be satisfying," Winifred mumbled. Clefairy was the first opponent, and she faced Nim. Unfortunately, the little rat wasn't strong enough to stand up to the normal type. He was angry that Winifred called him back, but she assured him it was for his safety. Gaia was her choice of opponent because normal type attacks were practically useless against rock types. Clefairy hurt its hands trying to use double slap, then took a rock throw. It tried to use metronome, but yielded a bad move. Gaia knocked out Clefairy and came face to face with Whitney's mill tank. Winifred heard the gym trainers behind her saying this mill tank was unbeatable. She was going to change that today. Gaia and mill tank exchanged blow after blow. It was the longest battle between two rock-hard titans, both of whom had to be healed. Eventually, a worn-out Gaia pulled off a level 10 magnitude and knocked out the mill tank. Gaia started to drop from exhaustion, but Winifred caught her, holding her up and smiling at her. The gym trainers were shocked, and Whitney was stunned into submission. She looked at Winifred, who smirked. "Don't go crying to thine mother whence thou loses," she said, and Whitney burst into tears. "Oh, please. It was only a matter of time before someone defeated you." "But I don't lose. My mill tank is the best mill tank ever." "Everyone loses sometimes. Some more than others," Winifred told her. "The important thing is to pick thyself up, dust off thy clothes, and try again." Whitney looked at her again and considered her words. She wiped her eyes and handed over the plain badge to Winifred. Winnie pinned her third badge to her cloak and carried her Geodude out of the gym. They rested at the Pokemon Center, Nim pouting in a corner. Winifred picked him up and stroked his head. "Thou wilt grow stronger. Please do not take today as a failure. I simply did not want to lose thee. Dost thou comprehend?" she asked him. Nim butted his head gently against her cheek. "That's my boy." On the next route, she caught a female Nidoran that she named after Sarah. In the national park, she participated in a bug-catching contest and obtained Flit, the Butterfree, coming in third place. They decided to camp here for the night, and Winifred found herself unable to fall asleep without Nim at her head. Where was he? She got up and went to look for him, finding him practicing headbutt against a tree. She crossed her arms and cleared her throat. Nim turned around to look at her with tears in his eyes. She called him over and sat him down in her lap. "You are stronger than you think, Nim. Just because Clefairy hurt you in battle doesn't mean you are a failure. Please stop beating thyself up and come back to camp," she said. Nim chattered loudly, hopping out of her lap and crying. Winifred was picking up on the fact that Nim considered himself the metaphorical attack dog of the group, since he could hit so hard. He was upset he couldn't battle in the gym for her and protect his best friend Gaia from getting so tired. Winifred understood, got up, looked for a wild Pokemon, and she found a few to let him fight against. Nim looked back at her after every victory, and she would nod to him. After one big fight, he looked at Winnie and glowed brightly. Winifred felt her jaw drop as Nim evolved. "Raticate has been registered to your Pokedex," beeped her encyclopedia. "Nim! Look at what thou hast accomplished! Winifred cheered for him, and he ran over to her. She hugged him tightly as he rubbed against her. See, you work hard and were rewarded. But I think thy size might make sleeping by my head a bit more difficult. He made it work, and Winifred ended up sleeping fairly deeply. She woke up the next day to shocked faces from everyone when they saw Nim. She laughed at their reactions, then set off for the next route. She caught Romeo the male Nidoran, then ran into a strange roadblock. It looked like a tree, but felt like stone. She'd obtained a squirt bottle and goldenrod, and thought perhaps that would work. She sprayed the roadblock, and the tree turned out to be a rock-type Pokemon called Sudowoodo. Laurium took it on, and after several tries, Winifred ended up having to throw a great ball at it. She'd busted enough Pokeballs on this thing. 1, 2, 3, click! Sudowoodo has been registered to your Pokedex. Bonsai, thou wert a pain to catch, Winifred huffed. She sent him to the meadow, then turned her attention to some training for her team. Laurium wanted to go for it first, and fought some trainers on the route. After one particularly grueling battle, he glowed brightly and evolved. Weepinbell has been registered to your Pokedex. Mavis wanted a turn after she saw Laurium evolve. Laurium handed her something he'd found on the ground. It was a soothe bell to boost friendship. Winifred put it around her Zubat's neck. Mavis fought hard against wild Pokemon and glowed brightly too. She evolved into Golbat, and Laurium cheered for her. Mavis wanted to keep fighting, and Winifred agreed to it. After one more level up, Winifred nearly fell backwards as Mavis glowed again. She evolved a second time? Crobat has been registered to your Pokedex, beeped her Pokedex. Golbat evolves into Crobat when its levels of friendship are high. Winifred watched Laurium and Mavis hugging happily, and she couldn't help smiling proudly. She really liked watching the pair of them grow in their bond. And now, previously on episodes 4 and 5, Winifred and her many newly evolved Pokemon started their next day by catching a Pidgey named Hedwig. They traveled together into Ecruteak City, Tonatru by her side, and she immediately sensed power in this place. Winifred followed her instincts to a tower that was decrepit and smelled of old smoke. The nameplate read, Burned Tower, Resting Place of the Great Beasts. Great beasts, eh? Winifred looked at Tonatru, and they nodded to each other. She walked in and felt great power inside the structure. As she explored, she nearly lost her footing next to a hole in the floor. All of the floors! Winifred peered down and saw what looked like 3 large statues at the bottom. Quite a sight to behold, no? A man said, walking up next to her. He had a friend with him. Winifred turned to him and nodded. Down there lay the 3 legendary beasts. Legends say that one with a brave spirit can awaken them to roam the earth once more. I seek their leader, the legendary Suicune. My name is Eugene, and I intend to awaken these beasts. If you stick around, perhaps you will witness their revival. I'd be intrigued, to say the least, she said, then addressed the man behind him. And you are? Morty, I'm the gym leader in this city, and this maniac's best friend. Forgive his bravado, he's been talking the ear off of every explorer in this place, Morty said as Eugene pushed forward to the ladder that led down to the statues. Huh, what an imbecile, Tonatru. To think he could awaken such beasts with an ego of that size, Winifred said to her Flaffy. He was a bit of a blowhard, said another voice. Winifred turned to see Max walking over to her. Hey, Winnie, I take it he gave you an earful too, huh? Hello, Max. Yes, he was quite a nuisance, she replied. How long could she keep up this facade of pretending to not know who he was? What are you doing here? Oh, I came to give Ghastly some exercise. He thrives in places like this. Any chance your team's up for a fight? As always, we can take time out of our day to teach you a thing or two, she replied, and he laughed. You know, Winnie, you may look like a kid, but you speak like an adult. Max told her. And that said, I'll show you a thing or two this time. Let's go, Ghastly. "Tonitru on deck, please," Winifred said to her Flaffy. Ghastly used Curse to drain Tonitru's health at the end of each turn, but in return it had to cut its own health. This allowed Tonitru to knock it out with Thundershock. When Crocodile made an appearance, Winifred withdrew Tonitru and sent in Lorium. However, her Weepinbell was badly hurt by Crocodile's Ice Fang. Winifred had no choice but to pull him back and send her Flaffy back in. Crocodile used Scary Face to lower Tonitru's speed, but Thundershock hit twice and took him out. Zubat fell to Tonitru as well, but Max had a new Pokemon called Magnemite. Winifred realized it was a Steel type, so she brought in Wildfire to fight. Magnemite tried using Supersonic to confuse him, but Wildfire was too fast, and his Flame Wheel attack knocked out the foe in a single blow. Max exhaled, almost in frustration, then checked on his Pokemon. "Hey, nice try, Magnemite. We'll get them next time," he said, then looked at Winifred. "Looks like I need to train before I take on the 5th gym. Morty was easier to beat than you. Hope you get your next badge. I'll see you around." "You certainly will. I expect my rival to grow stronger next time we meet," she said to him, and he nodded. Winifred decided to go investigate the statues herself, and she found Eugene looking upset. They hadn't budged. She walked around each of the statues, examining their physique and recalling how Suicune had once rejected her advances in favor of Mary. She felt quite pitiful after that, but her team had been so strong it didn't matter. As this thought crossed her mind, the 3 beasts glowed brightly in golden light, then awoke as living Pokemon. Winifred was shocked as Suicune looked her in the eyes before roaring and taking off with her brethren in tow. Eugene was dumbfounded that she had been the one to awaken the legendary Pokemon, and he swore to chase Suicune down. Morty rubbed the back of his neck as his friend barreled up the ladder. "I must say, I was impressed that they awoke for a mere kid," he told her. "But that spirit of yours intrigued them enough. I want to see it in action. Come to my gym whenever you're ready. My ghost types will give you quite the battle." Winifred took her Pokemon to the center for a little rest before heading for the gym. On the way there, Nim practiced his headbutt on every tree he passed. One such collision knocked an Execute out of a tree, and Winifred caught it, naming her Tropicana. Nim knew he was the team's best hope for victory in this gym, and Mavis was the backup. Winifred was putting her hopes on both of them, but more so Nim, because he had a Dark-type move, hit hard, and could not be hurt by Ghost-type attacks due to his normal typing. This proved true as he destroyed the gym trainers in a matter of minutes, and they approached Morty. "Impressive display, young Winifred, but let's see if your Raticate can survive my onslaught of specters and spooks," he said. "Nim is stronger than anything you throw at him," Winifred promised. "Aren't you?" Nim let out a short battle cry. Morty started the gym battle with his Ghastly, and Nim won the match with Crunch. His Haunter came in looking strong, but Nim's Crunch knocked it out in one hit too. Gengar managed to put Nim to sleep with hypnosis, but Winifred wasn't having that, and neither was Nim. They'd prepared for this. Winifred had bought a single awakening and used it to wake Nim up, and he was fast enough to dodge hypnosis again. He crunched into the ghost type, but only took down the opponent to yellow. Gengar put him back to sleep, with a more powerful attack this time. Winifred had to heal her Raticate a couple of times, but Nim finally woke up and struck, plunging Gengar into red. Winifred knew Morty would heal, so she called for Crunch again, and Nim got some free damage in. Nim wasn't quick enough and was put back to sleep, but he woke up much faster this time and dealt the finishing blow to Gengar. Winifred saw her Raticate beginning to pant. "Do you want to switch?" she asked him, and Nim shook his head. "All right, then. Keep fighting! Haunter, I'm counting on you!" Morty sent in his last Pokemon, though Winnie could see defeat in his eyes. "Crunch! Now!" she ordered. "Sucker Punch, Haunter!" Haunter hit first, but Nim glared at the ghost and smirked. His fangs charged up with dark energy, and he chomped down on the hand that punched him. Haunter fainted, and Nim let out a battle cry. Winifred cheered and dashed forward to hug her Raticate. She was so proud of him for taking on the gym by himself. Nim snuggled up to her happily, exhausted and in bliss, as his trainer hugged him tightly. Morty approached the pair and nodded. "Raticate is an impressive Pokemon. No one, and I mean no one, has ever bested me with such a common Pokemon before. Nim is no ordinary Raticate," Winifred assured him. "He is one of a kind." And a trainer to raise such Eradicate is most deserving of this. He handed over the fog badge and Winifred pinned it to her cloak. She was halfway there. Good luck on your next leg of the journey to the League. Thank you. Winifred left to go to the Pokemon Center, and she slept soundly with a Flaffy behind her knees, a Quilava between her arms, and Eradicate huddled up right behind her back. She didn't even need blankets at this point, and she was perfectly happy with that. She fed her team the next morning and looked at her map. She saw that one gym was across the sea, and she would need a water-type Pokemon to help her cross. She started for the exit of the city when she heard a ruckus from a nearby building. Mavis rushed off to help, with Winifred disapprovingly following behind her. When they entered the building, Winifred saw a Team Rocket grunt harassing someone who looked a lot like Naoko. The grunt was drunk beyond belief, so kicking his butt was easy for the Crobat. Sayo was grateful for the help and rewarded her with the HM for Surf. She still needed a decent water type. Winifred headed out for the next route where she caught Zip Zap Zop, her own Magnemite. On the route just outside of the next city, Winifred had a heated battle with a Tauros that just did not want to join her team at first, but her determination matched his bullheadedness and eventually, click! Tauros has been registered to your Pokedex, beeped her encyclopedia. Ash, you were a tough opponent, so I imagine you will make a fine addition to our family, Winifred said to the Pokeball. She sent him to the meadow and kept walking. Evening came as she stepped into Olivine City. Her team was tired, and she checked into the Pokemon Center. Before she could rest personally, she really needed to go see about catching a water-type Pokemon that was not a Magikarp or a tiny Wooper. She decided to go fishing in the harbor for an encounter and kept pulling up Magikarp. As she was about to give up, she felt a tug on her line. She pulled back, and out of the water popped a Krabby. It let go of the line and landed in her lap. She looked at him, and he looked at her before blowing some bubbles and putting a claw to his head in a sort of salute. "Hello there, little fellow," Winifred greeted him. "Thou art a Krabby, correct?" He blew some more bubbles. "Would you want to join me on my journey?" He blew one big bubble with a grin in his eyes. Winifred pulled out a Pokeball, and he tapped his claw on it, then went inside. "Krabby has been registered to your Pokedex. Sebastian, welcome to the team." Winifred felt like this was the piece her team was missing. The only problem was who was she going to sideline. She had everyone come out of their Pokeballs, and she examined each of them. "Friends, I face a dilemma. We are in need of a water type, and I have just caught this Krabby, Sebastian. I know we'll need to cross the ocean soon, so I need his help. Would any of you be willing to step aside and allow him to take your place on the team?" Winifred watched her team confabulate together for quite some time before Gaia floated over to her. Gaia gave a salute. "Thank thee, Gaia. Be ready in case we need to call on thee again." She hugged her Geodude before placing her back in her Pokeball and sending her to the meadow. "All right, Sebastian, introduce yourself to your new friends." Sebastian did just that, spending time with each member of the team to get to know them. He made fast friends with Nim, and Winifred was surprised by another visit from Max. "Hey, you caught a Krabby!" he exclaimed. "I only pulled up Magikarp when I fished here." "It took a long time to find Sebastian," she admitted. "How was thy gym battle?" "Fast," Max admitted. "She only did one-on-one with me because right as we were about to start, she got a call about a sick Ampharos in the lighthouse. I won, but I don't know if she was really trying. I was on my way over to the lighthouse to check on her when I saw you. She said she won't reopen the gym until the Pokemon is better. Perhaps I should accompany you on this little errand. I am rather good at persuasion," Winifred volunteered. "Yeah, maybe we can both give her a hand. Let's go," Max said. Winifred returned her Pokemon to their Pokeballs, and the two trainers hurried off for the lighthouse together. It was a long way to the top, and trainers challenged them on every floor. Sebastian pulled his weight well and began to catch up with his teammates in terms of levels. When they reached the top, Winifred and Max found the gym leader called Jasmine caring for a very ill Ampharos. Max offered some medicine he had on him, but it didn't work. Jasmine told them across the sea in Cheyennewood City was an apothecary who could make a medicine specifically for electric types. Ampharos was already enjoying having Max there, so he was asked to stay. This worked just fine for Winnie, as there was another gym over there. The problem was her Krabby was awfully small to get across the water. So she found an abandoned boat big enough for one person and hexed it to shrink and fit into her bag when she needed it to. She took it to the route facing the ocean and threw it in. She fashioned a harness for Crabby out of some discarded ropes. While Sebastian was too small for her to ride on, he was incredibly strong and agile at pulling a boat. He towed Winifred through the waters without a problem. On the way, she caught a tentacle called Morgana, and on the next route, she snatched a shelter called Sheldon. They reached Cheyenne Wood by nightfall and checked into the Pokemon Center. While Winifred's team was eating, Sebastian conversing with Nim and Wildfire, a trainer approached her. He carried a frightened Pokemon in his arms. "Excuse me, young lady, may I have a word?" he asked timidly. "What can I help you with?" she asked. "I know this is sudden, but I see how well your Pokemon are cared for, and, will you take my Shuckle?" "I beg your pardon?" she asked in surprise. "See, there was this Team Rocket grunt, and he stole all of my Pokemon but this one. I'm scared he's gonna come back, and I can't bear to lose Shucky, too. Please take him and keep him safe for me. I'll feel better if I know he's with a good trainer." Winifred thought about it when she saw Shuckle pop out of his trainer's arms and scamper over to the 6 Pokemon. Mavis patted him with her wing and offered him some food. Lorium gave a very big smile and expelled a sweet scent from his leaves in welcome. Winifred sighed. "Very well, I will take your Shuckle." After a tearful goodbye with his former trainer, Winifred adopted Shucky. He was fed, then placed in the meadow. Winifred and her team slept soundly in the Pokemon Center that night. Sebastian huddled up to Nim in the bed. The next day, Winifred went to the apothecary and told him what she needed. It would take several hours. This worked for her as she decided to explore the island. While walking on the beach, she came face to face with Suicune, who sniffed her over, inspecting her character, when all of a sudden, "Suicune, please! Take in the scent of a worthy opponent!" Eugene barked out of nowhere. Suicune turned and fled across the waters. "Ugh! I am worthy! Why did it pick you? Let me test your skills in battle and see for myself why Suicune likes you so much." Winifred indulged the egomaniac as Nim went up against his Drowsy. Drowsy didn't land any damage, and Nim took it down in 2 hits. His Electrode was a bit frightening as it knew the move Thunder, but Nim was so fast he dodged every advance, and after 3 attacks, he stared down the barrel of the final opponent, Haunter. Nim won. "With a single Pokemon, a mere Raticate, you laid waste to my Pokemon. I'll be keeping a close eye on you, Winifred. Suicune will be mine in the end." He left after that. Winifred decided to spend the afternoon training her Pokemon in the bay. Tonatru fought countless water types, and after a while, he began to glow. Winifred couldn't help laughing at the fact that she came here to help an Ampharos, only to now have won herself as Tonatru evolved. He learned Thunder Punch, and she was ecstatic. He hugged her as she hugged him from joy. During Sebastian's training, he too started to glow after several hours and evolved. Kingler has been registered to your Pokedex. "Sebastian, thou art a force to be reckoned with!" Winifred cheered for her now huge crab. Sebastian clicked his huge pincer happily and blew bubbles at her. Once everyone was trained, Winifred surveyed her team. Mavis, Sebastian, Nim, and Tonatru were fully evolved, and Wildfire and Lorium each had 1 stage left to go. Her team was prepared, and she strolled into the Cheyenne Wood fighting-type gym, with Mavis fluttering beside her. Mavis took out the trainer in single blows, then they stopped the flowing waterfall, separating the gym leader from them. He was very angry that she interrupted his supposed training. "And just how does standing under a waterfall qualify as training? To me it seems thou art shutting out the world. Pitiful tactic, in my opinion." "You little brat, I'll show you just how much my training's paid off," Chuck the gym leader shouted. "Go get 'em, Primeape!" "Mavis, show him how much real training thou hast been through." Winifred ordered her Crobat to attack. Mavis used Air Cutter, dealing massive damage to the Primeape, who decided to up his chances and use Double Team. No good. Mavis's focus was too strong, and she finished it off with a wing attack while dodging a rock slide. Polyrath jumped into battle against Mavis and was immediately sent into yellow from a wing attack. Her opponent put her to sleep, but Winifred woke her up with an awakening. Polyrath hit her, but it was hardly enough to hurt. She took him to red, then got in some free damage when Polyrath ate a citrus berry to restore its health a little. It put her to sleep, but Winifred woke her up again. Polyrath hit her with body slam, but Mavis endured the hit and finished off the battle with wing attack. Mavis soloed the gym all by herself and flew joyous circles around Winifred, who praised her skills. Chuck was so dumbfounded he handed over the storm badge without so much as a word. Now she had 5. One Pokemon defeated him. Maybe the kid was right about standing under the waterfall. Winifred left, and a woman had been watching her battle. She was gifted the HM for Fly, which turned into her broom. Mavis touched the broom handle and learned the move. The apothecary had the medicine ready for Winifred, so she used her broom to fly back to Olivine City with it. She delivered the medicine to Jasmine and Max, and Ampharos was healed, much to the relief of the gym leader. Jasmine asked her to come for a battle and told Max he could have a rematch, which he accepted immediately, bidding farewell to Winifred. Winifred took the night to rest with her Pokemon and finally had to lay down the law about everyone sleeping in the bed with her now that they were fully evolved. Tonitru curled up on the rug next to Sebastian as the two were becoming closer. Nim and Wildfire remained in the bed with Winifred as they were small enough for now. Laurium and Mavis continued to nest on the top bunk together. The next morning, they went to the Steel-type gym. Winifred had to admit she was a little nervous about this fight, but she was confident in her Pokemon's abilities. "Thank you so much for your help with Amphi. Max was a great help as well, but especially you for fetching the medicine." Jasmine's face suddenly got serious. "But that was then, and this is now. You want my badge? You'll have to work your way through my steel types." "I have every intention of doing so," Winifred replied. "Then show me what you've got. Magnemite on deck. Go get them, Wildfire." Wildfire charged into the fight with Flame Wheel, and Magnemite went down hard. Jasmine was taken aback by the power this Quilava held and decided to turn it up a notch. She brought out a massive Steelix. Winifred swallowed and held up her Pokedex. Steelix, the Steel Snake Pokemon. A steel and ground type, it said. "That's what I was afraid thou wouldst say," Winifred exhaled nervously. "Wildfire, come back!" She brought Wildfire back to her side, then threw a Pokeball. "Sebastian, I need thy help!" Her Kingler burst into battle and clicked his oversized pincer. Steelix set up a sandstorm that blasted inside the arena. Winifred's cape billowed in the wind, but she held strong, and so did Sebastian. She ordered him to attack with Surf, which halved Steelix's health, but the mighty snake ate a berry to restore a bit of it. Sebastian took an Iron Tail, and it had an occasional effect where it would drop his defense a step, and it happened here. Winifred had him use Surf again since his health was still well off. Steelix was plunged into red, and this time Iron Tail did not drop defense after Sebastian took a little more damage. Jasmine chose to heal, so Winifred took the opportunity to attack again, Sebastian bringing their opponent back to yellow. He took a hard hit from Iron Tail, but he smirked at Steelix and let loose a powerful Surf, knocking out the huge opponent as the storm petered out. Winifred cheered for him, but the battle wasn't over yet. Jasmine had a second Magnemite, and when Winifred saw it, she felt a slight chill run up her spine. She wasn't sure why. It was just a Magnemite. She sent Wildfire back into battle, but was stunned when Magnemite zapped him with a thunderbolt so strong he was plunged below half health. Now what could she do? Mavis and Sebastian were weak to electric types. Laurium wouldn't be able to make a dent. Wildfire's special defense wasn't going to withstand attacks like that. Tonitru was also electric type, so his moves would have little effect. Nim was her only choice. His Rock Smash attack was their best hope. She sent him into battle, and he took a thunderbolt far better than Wildfire had. "Nim, attack with Rock Smash!" Winifred ordered. Eradicate smashed his glowing tail into Magnemite, taking a third of its health away and dropping its defense by 1 step. "Good work, Nim!" "This is far from over, Winifred," Jasmine said. "Magnemite, paralyze it with Thunder Wave!" Magnemite did just that, but Nim was a fighter, and he hit with Rock Smash again, taking it to red. Winifred could feel victory in her grasp when Jasmine healed her last Pokemon. No matter, with his defense dropped, 2 hits was all they needed. However, paralysis hit this time, and Nim couldn't move. Thunderbolt zapped into him and he went into low yellow health. Winifred couldn't take off both paralysis and restore his health at the same time, so she chose to boost his health. Thunderbolt hit again at a higher damage roll this time, and Winifred suddenly found herself locked into a heal stall. Jasmine grinned almost menacingly as Nim had to take hit after hit, both Raticate and Trainer hoping the Magnemite would change tactics, but it never did. At one point it got a lower roll on its damage, and Nim, battered and singed, nodded to Winifred. "Rock Smash! Thunderbolt!" Thunderbolt struck first, at critical power. Nim let out a painful cry as Winifred also screamed for him. He hit the ground, motionless. Winifred let out a sad call to him before running forward to retrieve his body from the battlefield. She sent in Laurium, who looked at his fallen comrade and narrowed his gaze angrily. The Weepinbell struck with Vine Whip, hitting harder than he would have before, thanks to the defense drop Nim had pulled off. Magnemite used Thunder Wave to paralyze him, then struck with Thunderbolt, but Laurium resisted the move. He broke through paralysis as he heard Winifred sobbing over her Raticate, struck with Vine Whip, ending the battle. Jasmine looked horrified at what she had just done to the girl who had done so much for her friend Amphi. She knew a badge wasn't enough to make up for the loss of Nim. Laurium reached out a vine, grabbed the badge from the pedestal, and took it to Winifred himself. Jasmine tried to utter an apology, but Winifred raised a hand to her. "I do not need thy sympathy. This is not going to stop us," she said darkly. She had something in her bag that she knew would help. "Your Magnemite was a worthy opponent, but I assure you, my Raticate will revive." With her 6th badge in her cloak, Winifred hurried to the Pokemon Center and withdrew her Magikarp before going to her guest room. Pirano was not as useful to her as the other water types she owned, and therefore was the perfect vessel for her life potion. She cracked open the revive she had picked up and found what she needed inside to brew it. Once it was made, she apologized to Pirano, fed it to him, and breathed his life force into Nim. When Pirano went limp, she said goodbye to him and returned him to his ball. Nim laid in her lap, the 5 other Pokemon staring at him as his whiskers began to twitch. The team had been shocked by his death, shocked by their trainer's actions. But when Nim opened his eyes, they were all so relieved to have their friend back that they didn't care. Winifred hugged him close to her and even kissed him on the head. "Nim, I vow to never let anything like that happen to thee again," she whimpered. Nim brushed her chin with his head, then settled in for a nap. "Rest, my friend, for you deserve it." Everyone huddled up against Winifred and Nim, and Trainer and Pokemon all fell asleep for a while. And now. Previously on episodes 6 and 7. After a day of recovery for Nim, Winifred and her team set out for the Safari Zone. She had heard trainers all talking about how many Pokemon were there, and she wanted to catch some badly. On Route 47, she caught a Chinchou named Kerosene. Inside Cliff Cave that led up toward the Safari Zone, Winifred was caught by surprise when she ran into an enraged Steelix. Laurium, ever her faithful companion, helped her weaken the behemoth, and she threw Pokeball after Pokeball. She wanted this one. Steelix refused to be caught, but Winifred remained strong. "I will not give up, Steelix. Thou shalt join my team," she said strongly, as she threw one last Pokeball. Click. Steelix has been registered to your Pokedex. "Steela, thou wert a worthy opponent. Let us work together from now on." On Route 48, just outside the Safari Zone, she caught a Growlithe named Kovu. Upon arrival in the Safari Zone, Winifred followed the flock of trainers into the catching area. For all the Pokemon she heard were there, she only caught one, Jessie, the Clefairy. Disappointed, she rested at the Pokemon Center with her team. Wildfire sat at her feet while Nim laid on the rug with Sebastian and Tonatru. Laurium was still tuckered out from fighting with Steela, so Mavis held him in her wings as he slept. Winifred figured out her next stop was Mahogany Town to the east of Ecruteak City. Holding Wildfire in her arms that night, Winnie slept peacefully, hoping her journey kept going so smoothly. She flew back to Ecruteak the next morning with Mavis by her side, and when they headed east, she caught Chicken Little the Sparrow. Winifred wandered into Mount Mortar, picked up a lot of discarded items, and caught Jackie the Machop. It took until nightfall for Winifred and her team to reach Mahogany Town. When she checked into the Pokemon Center, she saw 10 trainers run in after her carrying injured Pokemon. Winifred, while feeding her team, overheard all of them talking about Pokemon evolving before they were supposed to at the Lake of Rage, and tales of a strange red Gyarados. Winifred looked at her team and they nodded. Why not go solve this problem themselves? It was late, but a red Gyarados couldn't be that hard to spot. Winnie and her team hurried up the route towards the lake and caught Luke, the Girafarig. The closer Winifred got to the lake, the stormier it became. By the time she reached the lake shore, thunder was rolling and rain poured down on her head. In the center of the lake was a huge red Gyarados. It was attacking anything and everything that came near, including someone who looked awfully familiar. "Tonitru! Sebastian, get out here and assist me!" Winifred sent in both of her Pokemon to fight. "Tonitru, Thunder Wave and paralyze it as quickly as you can!" Tonitru landed his move and it was Sebastian's turn. "Sebastian, whittle it down with your attacks! Tonitru, stand aside until I call for thee again." Sebastian went fin to fin with Gyarados, and he held his own. He was doing the best he could, running up and down the serpent's back. Winifred cheered him on, as did Tonitru. Eventually, he weakened it enough that Winifred took a chance and threw a great ball at the beast. Sebastian, who had been mid-air, caught the Pokeball right as it clicked. "Gyarados has been registered to your Pokedex." "Well, that settles that. Hopefully I can train thee properly, Paprika. Poor thing." Winifred pocketed the Pokeball as the familiar trainer landed in front of her. "Lance, I thought I recognized thee." "Have we met?" he asked her. Winifred thought quickly. "Nay, I simply know of thee from thy prowess as a trainer," she fibbed. Of course, he didn't remember their battle in the league. "Well, I'm glad to have met you regardless. I've been trying to tame that Gyarados for hours, and you came in and did it in a matter of minutes. Your Kingler's something else, as is your Ampharos," he complimented her. "They are well trained." She patted them both. "And the trainer in question?" "Winifred." "Winifred, may I ask for your assistance?" "With what, pray tell?" "Team Rocket is behind the rampaging red Gyarados. They're using some sort of radio signal to force Pokemon to evolve." "Incomprehensible. Team Rocket has developed such magic." "Oh, not magic. Science. But I figured out where it's coming from. I need some help breaking in and stopping them. Up for a little breaking and entering? And clobbering, I hope," she sneered. "I like you," Lance chuckled. "It's late, but think you can help me out tonight?" "Of course, but please, allow me to rest my Pokemon for a moment at the center." "Meet me at the souvenir shop," Lance said, and they went their separate ways. Winifred met up with the trainer known as Bill, whom she'd met in Kanto at the center. He asked her to take an Eevee he'd found abandoned, so she obtained Ravi, and thought he'd make a nice sibling for Cobbler. After she had her team healed by the nurse, she met up with Lance, who had already started taking out the guards in the shop. Together, they broke into the underground hideout and started walloping grunts left and right. They broke Pokemon out of cages, and one decided it liked Winifred enough to join her, so she caught Dynaguy, the Voltorb. They found a locked barrier, and Lance got some information out of a grunt by force. Winifred couldn't understand why it suddenly got so warm in that room. They needed a password to open the barrier, so they split up to find it. Winifred and her Pokemon got 2 passwords that she found out were used to find the boss. When she entered the 2 passwords and walked into the office, she found someone who looked like Giovanni, but acted completely different. "Oh, drop the facade, you pompous dunderhead," Winifred huffed as he tried to sell himself as the boss. "I know Giovanni, and thou art not he." "Man, I thought I was doing better at my impression," he sighed, then ripped off his disguise. "I am Petrol, the executive of Team Rocket. I take it you're here to get the password off of me? Well, that won't be happening without a battle." "Oh, very well," she sighed. Nim was called into battle against his Zubat, and he took it out with 1 headbutt. Coughing fell hard to a critical hit headbutt, and Petrol sent in his own Raticate. Nim was far more powerful than the enemy, and with 2 rock smashes, he took it out and pounced on Petrel, ready to sink his fangs into him. "Ready to talk now?" Winifred asked the quivering man. "Password is Hail Giovanni, but it won't work unless I say it," he stammered. Winifred spied his Murkrow in the corner, held her arm out, and it landed on her. "Say it to the bird," she said. Petrel did, and Murkrow repeated it flawlessly. "Thank thee. Nim, come." Nim nipped Petrel's leg, then walked off with Winifred. She met back up with Lance, and the tube went back to the barrier. She held up the Murkrow, and after it said the password, the barrier opened. Suddenly, another admin appeared named Ariana, and she challenged them to a fight. Lance's Dragonite did most of the work, but Winifred held her own with her team. Once the rockets were defeated, they freed the electrode that had been enslaved to run the evolution machine. Lance thanked Winifred for all of the help, and he hoped he would see her in the league. To that end, she returned to the Pokemon Center exhausted and slept until mid-morning the next day. Winifred investigated the gym and saw the leader used ice types. She chose to train her team for a while, and Wildfire was really jazzed up that day. By the time everyone felt ready and walked into the gym, the first trainer was taken down quickly by a flaming Quilava, and those flames glowed brighter and brighter until Winifred gasped as Wildfire evolved. Typhlosion has been registered to your Pokedex. "Wildfire, my boy, look at thee!" He ran over to his trainer and hugged her tightly. Winifred hugged him too, and they burned through the rest of the trainers. "Well, well, a mighty Typhlosion. Such a shame that he will not be able to best my Pokemon," the elderly leader said. "Thy ice types stand no chance against him," Winifred said confidently, but Price laughed at them. "We shall see. Seal! Let's go!" Winifred realized he had water and ice types. She had no choice but to make Wildfire sit out. Tonytrue came in and thunder-punched the seal after being hit with Ice Shard. Piloswine came in next, and Winifred had to consult her Pokedex. It was a ground and ice type. She sent in Sebastian, who used Surf twice, and took out the Piloswine. Tonytrue came in for the last Pokemon called Dugong. Tonytrue was far too powerful for the water-ice type, and he only got hit by Aurora Beam twice. Discharge rolled too low the first time, and Price healed his Pokemon. The second time, Discharge took it out in one shot. Price was shocked at how swiftly and well Winifred did in battle, and he gave her the Glacier Badge. One more to go. "Your prowess with Pokemon is unmatched, child. Go forth and keep fighting," he said. "I shall." Winifred was more than impressed with her Pokemon, and it dawned on her that she had only lost one Pokemon by Gym 7, and she was able to resurrect him. This journey was going far smoother than she would have ever thought it would. She looked her team over, smiled at all of them, and now... Previously on episodes 8 and 9, as Winifred celebrated their 7th gym win, her Pokegear rang and scared the life into her. Professor Elm's voice exploded from the device. "Winifred, it's terrible! I've been trying to reach you for days, and only now I've managed to get through. Team Rocket has taken control of all radio stations." "What is that?" "The Pokegear lines. I repeat, what is that?" "And they're trying to break into the PC systems to steal everyone's Pokemon. Get your Pokemon out of the system as soon as you can. Goldenrod City is already under attack." "Oh, they'll not get away with this. Gaia and everyone else needs their meadow." Winifred hung up on the professor and turned to her team. "Team Rocket's reign of terror ends now. I will not let our sweet friends be stolen by those imbeciles. Come, we fly!" With Mavis by her side, Winifred ascended upon her broom into the sky. She flew at top speed to Goldenrod City, where she found the place surrounded. She landed in time to see Max battling a Team Rocket grunt and winning. He defeated the grunt, then punched him out, and Winifred was actually impressed by his fervor. So this is how it felt to be on the same side. Max turned around, saw her, and ran over. "Thank God, another competent trainer," he said in relief. "Professor Elm called me about getting my Pokemon out of the PC, but I'd rather take these guys out and save everyone else's." "Funny. I was planning to do the same," she smirked. "Then let's work together and clear those guys out," Max said. They're held up in the radio tower. I overheard them saying that all of their bosses are inside. We can finish this today if we take them out. They will not simply allow us entry, Winifred told him. She picked up the unconscious grunt by the collar. One set of clothing for thee. She quickly sent Mavis to knock out a female grunt, and the Crobat dragged her back. And one for me. You're a violent kid, Max noted nervously. If only you knew, Winifred chuckled. They quickly took the uniforms off their hostages, tied them up with one of Max's escape ropes, and got dressed in their disguises. Winifred sent Nim out to accompany her, and Max sent out his Golbat, both Pokemon frequently used by Team Rocket. They made their way to the radio tower and were admitted quickly. They started battling grunts one after the other. Their combinations were unbeatable. Nim and Golbat would smile at each other before dealing the final blow. Winifred and Max fought their way through the first few floors unscathed, and then they ran into the director's office. "Director, are you okay?" Max asked. "Oh, I'm fine, young man. I'm simply making an announcement," he said. Max started to look relieved, but Winifred put a hand in front of him to signal him to wait, as the speakers came to life. "Attention, Johto region. Team Rocket is not a band of criminals, they are our friends." "Imposter!" Winifred said, and out of instinct, she waved her hands and pulled the disguise off of Petrol. Max looked at her in surprise. "Petrol, of course it was thee. Thou art a master of disguise, but a terrible impressionist." "That may be, but I'm not the only one wearing a disguise, am I?" he asked her. "Well, the both of us are in thy uniforms." Winifred rolled her eyes and Max nodded, still side-eyeing her a little bit. "Not what I meant." "Winifred Sanderson!" Petrol waved his own hands, and Winifred's childlike disguise was taken away right in front of Max's eyes. "Wait, what?" he stammered as he saw the witch who'd tried to kill his sister, and him. "You? Winnie, I should have guessed! That's what your sisters called you! It was you the whole time? Dennison, now is not the time to lose thy nerve!" she shouted at him. I trusted you. Thought you were my friend." Max was in shock. He steadied himself against the wall. "Oh, darn, did I ruin your plans to double-team our organization?" Petrol snickered. "He'll recover, but thou wilt not be so lucky," Winifred shouted. "Coughing! Quickly, cover my escape with sludge!" "I think not. Wildfire on deck and use lava plume." Wildfire burst into battle and exploded with flames, knocking out the coughing. Wheezing came in and barely tickled him with sludge. Lava Plume nearly destroyed Wheezing on the first shot, but the second took care of it. Wildfire was absolutely too powerful for all of the coughings that Petrol threw out, and pretty soon he was defeated and crying on the ground after Winifred gave him a few jolts. Max looking on in shock. All right, I'll talk. The real director is in the department store basement." "Max, I'm leaving him to thee," Winifred said, and ran past her shocked ally. She grabbed the key from Petrol's belt. She ran to the entrance to the underground of Goldenrod's store and hurried down to the locked door, where yet another kimono girl was waiting. "I've been trying to get in here for hours. Thank Arceus, someone arrived. There's a man trapped in there." "I know. You wouldn't be related to Naoko, would you?" Winifred asked as she unlocked the door. "My little sister! I'm Satoko." "Winifred, now go find the authorities and be ready to round up those fools in black." "Got it. Good luck," Satoko said. Winifred ran inside and cleared out the grunts, but before she could go any further, "Stop right there, Sanderson!" Max barked from the back. "I'm not letting you get away." "I am merely trying to find the director," she told him. "Probably to put him under a spell," Max said darkly. "This entire time you've been right under my nose. You've probably been cheating your way through every gym and trying to become the champion of Johto, just so you can have everyone at your disposal. Thou art in shock. If you wish to defeat Team Rocket, then help me." "How do I know you're not helping them?" "There's no way you're doing this out of kindness. You don't know the meaning of the word. You don't care about anybody. You knew who I was the entire time, didn't you?" "Didn't you?" "Of course I did, you fool. But," she took a deep breath, "I hid it because I'm alone in this world. The only allies I have are my Pokemon. And I must admit, I did not despise having thee around either. Having a friend was nice. We are not friends, and never will be. You did so much evil, and you're going to pay for it, Max growled, pulling a Pokeball from his belt. I know I did, and I'm trying to make up for it. 'Tis why I'm here, and why, I imagine, thou art as well, she said. Let's finish this endeavor together. Never! I will never help you again! Golbat! Air Cutter! Max's anger was too much, and he sent in his Pokemon. If this is the way thou must have it, I'll oblige. Tonitru, discharge! Winifred sent in her Ampharos. Golbat hesitated before he struck, taking it a little easy on Tonitru, then used Confuse Ray on him. Tonitru's discharge knocked out Golbat. Max sent in his best partner for Alligator, but Tonitru was very protective of Winifred's honor, and he took out the foe with discharge. Max was so mad he sent in his Haunter, who trapped Tonitru in battle with Mean Look. Tonitru struck with Thunder Punch, then took a Shadow Ball. It hurt pretty bad, but Thunder Punch finished the job. Max's Sneasel came in to fight, and it was so fast Winifred had to heal Tonitru before he was hit twice more. Discharge hit and almost took care of it, but he took another hit before knocking him out. Magnemite was the final opponent, and Winifred swapped out with Wildfire. It's over, Dennison! You cannot defeat me! I did once, I'll do it again! Magnemite, you can't lose! Thunder Wave! Wildfire! Flame Wheel, Winifred said half-heartedly. Her Typhlosion defeated the last opponent, and Max swore under his breath. Thou art a good person. Now go find the authorities to take in Team Rocket. I will not do anything thou wilt disapprove of, she promised. Winifred ran off to finish her fights in the underground, and she saved the director. He gave her the key to the upstairs of the radio tower, and she hurried back as fast as possible. She battled Proton first, defeating Golbat and Weezing with Nim. Ariana was next, but her Arbok and Vileplume were no match for Wildfire. It wasn't long before she stood in front of the big boss. My name is Archer, and you are Winifred Sanderson. So, your disguise was destroyed by Petrel. How did your friend take the news that he was working with his arch-nemesis? Not particularly well. Winifred narrowed her eyes. Everything was going well up to now. Now I've no choice but to destroy all of you. Temper, temper, witch. But if it's a battle you want, you'll get one. Archer sent out a Houndour, which fell to Sebastian's Surf, and Coughing fell soon after. Houndoom and Sebastian exchanged multiple blows, with Winifred needing to heal him a couple of times. Eventually, Sebastian took it out, and Winifred zapped Archer into submission. The director ran up with a policeman, and they took Archer away. Winifred was thanked, and then gifted a rainbow-hued feather by the director. She looked confused. That is a rainbow wing, said to belong to the legendary Ho-Oh. It is said only one with a heart of gold could summon the creature. I think you fit the bill. Nay, I could never. Humility is nice. But you are worthy of this, he said. Winifred left the tower with the wing and journeyed back to Mahogany Town, where she knew she would depart for the final Gym Town. She slept in the Pokemon Center with her Raticate by her side, feeling a little weird. Max knew she was no longer hidden from him, and she actually felt guilty. She was ready to go home, and she had one more badge to collect before she could. As she traveled along the next route on the following morning, she caught String Cheese the Tangela before entering the ice path where she caught Kristoff the Swinub. Inside, she was tested by puzzles and ended up saving one more Kimono sister from being stuck in the ice. She entered Blackthorn City and looked around the town. It wasn't much, but there was dragon effigy everywhere. She had a good idea of the type the gym leader used. She went to train her Pokemon below and caught Venom the Gligar. Inside the town, she caught Whirlpool the Poliwag and took a rest at the center until midday, when she returned to training. As she trained her team, she thought about the past and her friendship with Max. She'd never had friends beyond her sisters, and it had been nice. But that was over. She really had to shake it from her mind. The following day meant her final gym battle, so she had no choice but to focus solely on that. When she entered the gym, her Pokemon were tested against the dragon types, and she found herself relying on Tonitru and Nim the most. When she walked up to the gym leader, she found an arrogant woman. "You don't look like much, but to even lay your eyes on me is an accomplishment. I'm Claire, the dragon-type leader, and your downfall. We'll see about that," Winifred said. Tonitru went up against her Gyarados, who used Dragon Rage twice before falling to a single discharge. Dragonair came in next, but Tonitru stayed strong. Winifred healed him, and Dragonair used Thunder Wave to paralyze Ampharos. Tonitru took hits and dealt thunder punches, but eventually paralysis became too much. Winifred had to switch out with Nim when Claire healed. Nim was now in the position of fighting paralysis and trying to deal attacks. His headbutt did some damage, and eventually he overcame paralysis and took it out. Next came Kingdra, and Winifred decided to send in Laurium. But Hydro Pump was too powerful. She switched him out for Mavis, who had a better time standing up. Winifred had to heal stall until she saw an opportunity when Kingdra started using Hyper Beam. That move caused extreme fatigue until the next turn, so Winifred was able to heal Tonitru and bring him back in. Tonitru took several big hits, but he turned things around and eventually took out the Kingdra. One more Dragonair came in and did battle with Tonitru long enough for Winifred to heal Nim and bring him in. The Raticate took a hard hit, but he dealt one back with Headbutt. Winifred had no choice but to heal him again, twice, due to a critical hit slam, but when Dragonair used Dragon Pulse, it didn't hit hard enough. "Nim! Headbutt! And finish this!" Winifred shouted. Nim responded to his trainer's call and dealt the final blow. Winifred won, and she fell to her knees as Nim and Tonitru limped over to her, exhausted. She held both of them close and smiled. "Thank you, boys. Thank you so much," she sniffed. "No, no, no! I refuse to be beaten by anything less than a dragon type, especially not a Raticate!" Claire threw a fit. "You do not get my badge." "Oh, yes, she does," shouted a voice from behind. An elderly gentleman walked up to Claire. "Elder, what are you doing here?" "We've had it with your inability to accept loss, child. You may not send any more trainers to take the Dragon Master's challenge because they beat you. This young lady may not be more than a child in your eyes," so her disguise had held, "but she has demonstrated amazing prowess to defeat you with nothing more than an Ampharos and Raticate. You will hand over the badge now. I could tell from that battle, especially how she confidently called to her Pokemon that she has a heart of gold. She treats her Pokemon better than many that have crossed paths with you. Now hand over the Rising Badge." Claire did so, begrudgingly. Winifred pinned it to her cloak and sighed in relief. Only the League was left. The elder approached Winifred. "How much do you love your Pokemon?" "Very much," she said sincerely. "Why are you fighting?" "Because I have a duty to my family. They need me to win the champion title, so I may come home to them." "You are doing this for ones you love?" "Yes." "Then you are going to succeed." He held out a Pokeball. "And perhaps this Dratini can help you." Winifred took Ariel and sent her to the meadow. Professor Elm called her to come to the lab where she received a master ball. She was also informed the Kimono sisters were looking for her, and to meet them in Ecruteak immediately. She flew there, slept for the night, and arrived at their dance theater in the morning. "We called you here because you have what it takes to bring back this region's deity called Ho-Oh. You passed each of our tests to prove your golden heart," Naoko told her. "People keep saying I have such a heart, but I do not," Winifred said truthfully. "I have committed many atrocities in my life." "We know, Winifred Sanderson. But your love for your sisters proves that your heart is not all black. There is gold at the center. You have fought for them all your life, and Ho-Oh will reward you for that," Satoko said. "You need to prove to us that your golden heart applies to all aspects of your life." Winifred agreed to their challenge and fought their evolutions one at a time. She won against Umbreon, but when Wildfire came up against Espeon, the Psychic type proved too powerful. A critical hit Psychic smashed into him, and he made eye contact with Winifred, then fell. She screamed for him, and as soon as the battle ended, thanks to Tonitru, she told them to stop the test. She ran for the Pokemon Center and withdrew Trickster, her Ghastly. She told him what happened, and he nodded, accepting his fate willingly. She brewed a life potion and said goodbye to her Ghastly. She drained his life force into Wildfire, who coughed and came back to her. She cradled him lovingly and heard sighs behind her. The Kimono sisters had seen it all. Your heart is true. Even when making such a difficult choice, you made the one who betrayed his life feel comfortable and noble for their sacrifice. Come to Bell Tower and help us summon Ho-Oh. Winifred, knowing these women had confidence in her, hurried with them to Bell Tower and caught a new Ghastly there, named Mischief, in Trickster's honor. She climbed to the top of the tower and was given a clear bell to ring as the Kimono sisters danced. She silently whispered to the bell, "Please, Ho-Oh, show me you think I am worthy. I have a Master Ball, but I will only use it if you say it is all right. I find myself lost without my sisters, but I have had a good journey so far. I want to do right for once. Give me that chance." When she opened her eyes, a great Phoenix Pokemon stared at her. Ho-Oh. Winifred took a deep breath and sent in Wildfire, who wanted to fight. He wanted to show her he was strong and worthy of reviving. She didn't need a battle to prove that. Wildfire went at it with Ho-Oh, one blow at a time. Winifred had to heal him a few times, but Wildfire remained strong. Eventually, he reduced the legendary Pokemon's health to red. Winifred started throwing Pokeballs, but Ho-Oh broke out. She brought in Tonitru to use Thunder Wave to paralyze the beast before continuing to throw Pokeballs. They continued to break, but she looked at the deity. "I will not surrender!" Ho-Oh gave her a nod, as if to give her the go. "Master Ball! Go!" Click. Ho-Oh has been registered to your Pokedex. She sent him out. "Salsa, my friend, I will prove to you that you made the right choice." He pulled something from his feathers and gave it to her. It was a pouch of ashes. When she touched it, it became a black flame candle. "This candle will revive 3 of your Pokemon without a sacrifice," he told her telepathically. "Use it well." "I will. Thank thee." She sent him to the meadow, then realized there was only one thing left to do. Head to the League. She crossed over into Kanto, catching Ursula the Tentacruel and Cleo the Goldeen along the way. She fought her way along the routes and caught Blaze the Ponyta just outside of Victory Road, and inside she caught Brock the Donphan. There was a vast cave ahead, but with her Pokemon by her side, she could do it. And now, previously on episodes 10 and 11, Winifred and her team did some training to prep for the Pokemon League before going too far into Victory Road. Laurium needed the most training after evolving into a Victory Bell a few days earlier, but his attacks were astounding. He learned Leaf Blade and Leaf Storm, which increased his power greatly. Everyone did well, and Winifred was confident in her team. Together they hiked through Victory Road. When the end was in sight, she paused for a moment to consider everything that had happened during this trial. Oddly enough, she realized she had been much calmer on this journey than the previous one, and it was reflected in how well her team had come along. She only lost 2 Pokemon, and that was to revive Nim and Wildfire. Apart from that, she still had 1 life potion she could use, and now a Black Flame Candle that could revive 3 Pokemon without a sacrifice. Not only had they lost no team members, but everyone was very strong. Winifred knew her chances of victory in the league were high given how much she— "There you are," said a voice from behind her. Winifred whirled around and saw a very angry Max staring at her. "I knew I was brought to this place for a reason. It looks like that reason was to stop you from taking over this region. I won't let you become champion. Listen, boy." "No! You listen, Winifred Sanderson. I won't let you hurt anyone anymore. You may have stopped Team Rocket, but how do I know you weren't planning that the whole time? Dennison, listen. No! You used me. You pretended to be a friend, and I trusted you. You were lying to me from the start, and I won't forgive you for that." "Max, I did not lie about everything," she defended herself. "Yes, I did not reveal my true identity to thee." But everything I have done on this journey was real, including our partnership. I did not lie about enjoying your friendship. Shut up! We are not friends! You tried to kill my sister! Max yelled, then threw a Pokeball. Sneasel, feint attack, now! Sebastian, stomp attack! Winifred threw her Kingler into battle, and he slammed his foot on top of Sneasel as soon as he burst from his ball. We do not have to fight! Yes, we do, Max growled. Sneasel hit Sebastian, but barely made a dent. Stomp knocked it out. Magneton! Electrocute her Kingler with Spark! Sebastian, come back now! Winifred withdrew her Kingler in the nick of time. Wildfire! Flamethrower! She sent her Typhlosion into battle, whose flames knocked out the Magneton. Stop this foolish errand and talk with me. For Alligator, waterfall as hard as you can. Max sent in his partner to face hers. I can't let you do that. Winifred withdrew her Typhlosion and drew another Pokeball, sending in Tonitru. I have too much at stake to let you defeat me. Tonitru, discharge and defend thyself. Feraligatr did a small chunk of damage to Tonitru, then fell in a heap from the discharge attack. Max was seeing red as he sent in his Haunter, which Winifred countered with Nim. Haunter laid a curse on Nim to drain his health after every turn, but it cost half of Haunter's. Nim struck with Crunch and took it out. Every time Winifred's Pokemon clashed with Max's, their hearts sank a little further. They didn't want to fight their friends, and Max's team felt the same. Winifred had to heal Nim, as Max brought in his Kadabra. Nim got in a good hit with Crunch, but Kadabra lived on 1 health point. Winifred couldn't leave him in battle due to the curse affliction, so she switched back into her Ampharos. Kadabra used Recover to restore some of its health, then struck Tonitru with Psybeam. Tonitru retaliated with Thunder Punch and knocked it out. Golbat was Max's last Pokemon, and Tonitru took care of it with Discharge. Max dropped to his knees, lifted his fists, and slammed them into the ground with an agitated yell. I failed. How could I lose? He stammered. Thy anger was more powerful than thy focus, Winifred said. Don't lecture me. Max, I am not here for the reason you think. I was sent here to earn a chance at redemption. I think part of my test was mending bridges with thee. I thought I had, but I realize I should have told you the truth. I must defeat the champion so that I may return to Purgatory to be with my sisters, as we try our best to change our fate. I harbor no malicious intent, she told him, then turned on her heels and headed for the exit. I hope you find your way back to your family, too. She hurried up to the Indigo Plateau and reached it by nightfall. Winifred signed up for the Pokemon League minutes before the deadline. As she slept in bed that night with Nim by her side and all the others on the rug, she reflected once more on her journey, for the next day she would be going home. One by one, trainers were sent packing by the Elite Four, and Winifred watched and waited for her turn. Her team of 6 Pokemon stood by her side, waiting to live up to their trainers' expectations. Finally, her number was called, and she entered the first Elite Four's chamber. Hello, my name is Will, and my prowess with Psychic-type Pokemon is unmatched. What is the name of my challenger? He inquired. Winifred Sanderson, she replied, already formulating her strategy in her mind. Well then, Winifred Sanderson, show me your power with the proper battle to kick off your Pokemon League challenge. Xatu, time to shine. His first Pokemon entered the arena. Nim, I'm counting on thee. Winifred sent in her Raticate. Eradicate! Interesting choice. I've seen too many of these today, however. Thou hast not laid eyes upon Eradicate such as Nim, Winifred replied confidently. Nim charged in with Crunch and plunged Xatu into yellow health immediately. Xatu came back at him with a critical powered Psychic, causing Winifred to heal, only for it to happen again. She healed Nim once more, and this time Psychic did not hurt as much. It did get a special defense drop-off on Nim, though. Nim ended the bout with another Crunch, then prepared to fight Will's Jinx. Winifred remembered her own Jinx called Susie fondly for a moment, before ordering a one-hit knockout from Nim when he used Crunch. Exeggutor came in, which worried Winifred a little bit with the special defense drop Nim had suffered. To play it safe, she swapped him for Wildfire. Exeggutor set up Reflect to boost the team's defense, but Wildfire used a special attack move to bypass the boost. Flamethrower took it out in one shot. Slowbro was next, and Winifred opted to bring in Tonitru in place of her partner. Slowbro was part water type, so this was the safest bet for her. Slowbro started boosting its defensive stats while Tonitru chipped away at its health health rapidly with Thunder Punch, knocking it out. Will had a second Zatu that put a Confuse Ray on Tonatru, which hurt him once, but the discharge that followed ended the battle. Will was astonished and shook Winifred's hand vigorously before ushering her to the next chamber. She recognized this man as the former Fuchsia gym leader. "Welcome, Winifred Sanderson. I am Koga, the master of ninjas, and I will put your skills to the test right now. Ariados, let's go!" He sent in his first poison type. "Mavis, this one belongs to thee." Winifred sent in her Crobat. "Wing attack!" Mavis was so fast, Koga didn't have a chance to give Ariados an order. It fell immediately. Venomoth tried its hand against the bat, but was also defeated in a single blow from Mavis. Fortress, weirdly not a poison type, came in to face off against Mavis, but went up against Wildfire instead. It squandered its move by setting up toxic spikes and fell to Lava Plume. Muck was much bulkier, as it withstood Lava Plume at half health, but falling prey to a burn condition. It tried to boost its evasiveness, but to no avail, as Wildfire's Lava Plume practically destroyed it. Koga only had one left, his own Crobat. Wildfire did not like this imposter and so attacked with Flamethrower, but Crobat used Double Team and he hit an illusion instead. "Concentrate, Wildfire," Winifred told him. Wildfire did as she commanded, and this time he hit the correct Crobat, even though it used Double Team again. Crobat came in for a wing attack and met with Wildfire's Flame Wheel. The attacks exploded, and when the smoke cleared, Crobat was down and Wildfire stood in blazing victory. Winifred cheered for her Typhlosion as Koga admitted defeat and allowed her entry into the next room. The third member she recognized as well from her Kanto League journey. Bruno, the burly fighting-type trainer. "You are only one of 3 trainers to meet me in combat today, Winifred. I plan on sending you back to the start like I did the others. Let's go, Hitmontop!" His first fighting type burst onto the field. "Mavis, this type is your advantage. Get in there and show them that we will not be sent packing so easily." Winifred called for her Crobat to enter the fray. Mavis missed her first attack, causing Hitmontop to also miss as he had to use counter. The second fly attack brought down the Pokemon. What surprised Winifred was the Onix that Bruno sent in after. Mavis was weak to this Pokemon. She withdrew her in favor of Mavis's beloved Laurium. Laurium took a rock slide which barely tickled. Then with a loud screech, Laurium slashed the Onix with Leaf Blade and took down the Rocky Serpent with one attack. Hitmonlee was chosen next and Mavis flew back into the battle, tagging Laurium out as she entered. Hitmonlee tried to boost its critical power, but Wing Attack proved too much, and it fell. Hitmonchan came in next to face the powerful bat, and Mavis flapped her wings excitedly. Wing Attack once again hit hard enough to take out the foe in one shot. Bruno's last Pokemon was a Machamp, and Mavis looked to Winifred to keep her in. Mavis prepared to use Fly, as Machamp smacked her with revenge, but it just wasn't enough. Fly struck, Machamp fell, and there was only one Elite Four left. Winifred grabbed her Crobat and hugged her tightly before letting go so Laurium could do the same. Bruno, shocked at the power of this single flying type, let them into the final Elite Four chamber. "Boy, I have heard a lot of buzz about you today. The only trainer to make it past Bruno is the last trainer of the league. I'm Karen, and I like your mix of a team. Not many people would come to the Pokemon League with Eradicate by their side, and most would choose another water type apart from Kingler. You are training the way I prefer, Winifred, using the Pokemon you like best. Strong Pokemon, weak Pokemon, that is the selfish perception of people. A real trainer can make even the weakest Caterpie the strongest Butterfree. Now how about you show me that strength? Umbreon, Spotlight!" Her Dark-type evolution began the last heat of this Elite Four match. "Sebastian, give it thine all!" Winifred's Kingler was ready as he clicked his pincers. Sebastian opened up with Stomp twice before Umbreon used Confuse Ray on him. He did his best to fight through the confusion, but he hurt himself twice, and Karen undid all of the damage he had done to Umbreon with a potion. Winifred called him back for his safety and sent in Wildfire. Wildfire took a hit from Feint Attack, but dealt a Lava Plume so hot shot, it burned the Umbreon, which slowly drained its health. Wildfire was put into a confused state, but he landed a flame wheel that knocked out the opponent. Houndoom was next, and while Winifred was ready to switch back into Sebastian, it used Dark Pulse that did a lot of damage. Sebastian's special defense was naturally very low. She opted for Mavis in his place, who took a hit from Dark Pulse too, but managed to keep a little over half of her health. She hit Houndoom twice with what started out as Wing Attack but evolved into Air Slash. Air Slash added the effect of hitting hard enough to make an opponent flinch and unable to attack. She did it twice. Houndoom finally came back at her with Flamethrower that plunged her into red and burned her. Winifred held her breath as the burn damage sunk in, but Mavis stayed afloat. She quickly used a full restore on her Crobat, and Mavis was ready to keep going. Dark Pulse hit, but Mavis ended it with Air Slash. Murkrow was next, and Winifred tried to send in Tonatru, but the opponent's Whirlwind dragged in Sebastian. No matter, Sebastian's Stomp attack was plenty powerful, and in 2 hits the bird was defeated. Vileplume, a grass type, came in, and Mavis had to jump back into the fight. She got caught up in Petal Dance, but 2 Air Slashes did the trick. Gengar was the final Pokemon, and Winifred knew what needed to be done. She sent in Nim. Nim dodged a Focus Blast and used Crunch, plunging Gengar into yellow. Gengar attacked with Focus Blast again, but Nim was just too fast. He leapt over the Fighting-type attack and sunk his Dark Energy Fangs in one last time, with Crunch ending the match. Karen applauded Winifred and her entire team for this fight. This was the best Pokemon League fight I have ever been a part of. Your team is the most well-rounded, and I look forward to battling again someday. Now, go show Lance what you're made of. We will. Winifred smiled at her team, healed them, and walked to the champion's chamber. This was it. One last fight, and she was going home. I knew if anyone could reach me today, it would be you, Winifred. You've faced a lot on your journey in Johto, and I expect you to bring that level of power to this, your final battle. I refuse to lose. We refuse to lose, she said strongly. Then let's drop the formalities and get started. Gyarados, on deck! The sea serpent burst onto the field. Tonatru, I am counting on thee! Tonatru's tail crackled with electricity as the champion battle began. Gyarados struck with Waterfall, which hurt, but it also triggered Tonatru's static ability and paralyzed it. Tonatru returned fire with a discharge attack that knocked out the serpent in a single blow. Lance spared no hesitation and brought in Dragonite. Winifred decided to keep Tonatru in play and ordered another attack with discharge. Dragonite was far and away faster and slammed Tonatru with outrage so hard he was plunged into red. Static activated and paralyzed the opponent as discharge hit, doing 1/4 of damage to Dragonite's health. Winifred had to heal Tonatru as Dragonite was struck by paralysis. Tonatru hit him again with discharge as paralysis kept Dragonite from moving. This happened twice more, and as Tonatru was about to finish him, Lance healed, undoing all of the damage they had done. Winifred cursed under her breath as the paralysis was healed too. Tonatru grit his teeth and continued the fight, dodging a Hyper Beam and whittling down his foe's health again. Hyper Beam struck, taking half of Tony's health, but his discharge took out the Dragonite. Winifred was ready to switch when another Dragonite came in, and Tonatru insisted he stay. Winifred allowed this and healed him to be safe. Lance decided to give them a taste of their own medicine and use Thunder Wave, paralyzing Tony. Tonatru didn't give up so easily. Winifred didn't have a choice as Dragonite used Dragon Rush, which really hurt Tonatru. She had to heal stall. Finally, Dragonite missed his attack, used Thunder Wave, and Tonatru fought through it and struck with discharge, paralyzing his foe. Winifred took the opportunity to take off the paralysis on Tony as Dragonite was now in hot water. Tonatru's Thunder Punch almost took it out, but Dragonite couldn't move and the second punch did take it out. A third Dragonite appeared and Winifred was in shock. Tonatru still insisted he fight. Why was he doing this? She realized why. He was the only one who could. It became another heel stall battle as Dragon Rush hit hard every time. Lance was smirking a little, seeing how backed into a corner Winifred was. She saw his smirk and took it as a challenge. Tony finally got paralysis off, but the Dragonite was the most persistent and fought through keeping up with the heel stall. When Dragon Rush finally ran out, Dragonite switched to Hyper Beam, and Winifred was able to fight back. It was every other turn, but she managed to switch between healing and attacking flawlessly. It took some work, but Dragonite finally fell. Lance brought in Charizard, and Winifred finally took the opportunity to give her exhausted Ampharos a rest, as she brought in Sebastian. However, Sebastian couldn't take more than one air slash before he was in danger. Tonatru, without being called on, walked back onto the field and tagged Sebastian out. He wasn't done yet. Tony was exhausted, but he wasn't stopping until this was over. Air Slash and Fire Fang hit him before he could move, and Winifred had no choice but to heal. Thankfully, Static paralyzed the Charizard. Tonatru let out a battle cry and zapped Charizard with Discharge so hard it took him to yellow, activated Paralysis, and a second zap took him out. There was only one opponent left, and it was an Aerodactyl. Winifred went to bring Sebastian back in, but Tonatru baited her to keep him in. Tonatru? She looked into his eyes and saw the same spark that she held and nodded. All right. Keep fighting until this is over. Discharge! Tonatru hit Aerodactyl so hard, but it only lived with one health point, so Lance had to heal. Thunder Punch did a ton of damage, and he had to heal again. Lance's smirk was gone now, and it graced Winifred's face. He knew what was about to happen before it did. Thunder Punch, with all the power in thy body and spirit! Winifred shouted her final command at her Ampharos. Tonatru lit up with electricity and slammed the mega-powered fist into Aerodactyl, knocking it out and winning the battle. Winifred ran forward and caught Tonatru as he fell backwards from exhaustion, but he did not hit the ground. She hugged him, she cried over him, and she smiled the brightest smile she had in ages. This Ampharos had started as a hatchling Mareep in her arms, and here he was, the lone battler against the champion. He had done it all on his own, and she could not have held more pride in him. Tonatru smiled at her as Lance approached. With one single Pokemon full of determination and persistence, you destroyed my team, he stated in shock. One Ampharos against my dragons ended it all. You are the new champion of the Johto Pokemon League. Come, let us seal your victory in the Hall of Fame. He led Winifred to the final chamber, and on the wall she saw the past champions. Among them were Sarah and Mary, who struck her less confident than before. There were only 4 Pokemon in the photo. Togekiss, Venusaur, Hypno, and Arcanine. Underneath, the inscription read, "In memory of Ka the Huntail and October the Aggron." Mary had lost 2 Pokemon in the league? Winifred couldn't believe it as she placed her 6 Pokemon in the prime photo positions. She had to get home and find out what happened. She looked at all of them and grinned proudly. They were hers, and they were perfect. Lance added her photo to the Hall of Fame, and she waited for the Pokédex to bring out all of her Pokemon, but nothing happened. As an added bonus, you've been cleared to go to the Kanto region. Take this ticket to Olivine City and depart at your discretion. You've earned this title, Winifred, and I look forward to seeing what you have in store for the world next. Winifred took the boat ticket, gathered her Pokemon, and flew to Olivine City in absolute bewilderment. She wasn't going home yet? She pulled out her Pokédex after boarding the ship for the Kanto region. Explain thyself! Why am I not free from this world? Why am I still being held here? My sisters need me! Your trial is not yet complete. Your proctor awaits you in a location blocked from normal trainers. Complete the gym challenge of the Kanto region, and your doorway home will be unlocked. That is all I am allowed to say. It fell silent a moment later. You insolent little box! Winifred threw her Pokédex on the bed of her cabin, and she paced the room with Nim by her side. Very well. If I must continue this trial, then I will defeat every gym leader in the Kanto region. This time will be very different. I will lose no one, and my team will be the strongest those gym trainers have ever seen. And so Winifred vowed to put her former Kanto journey behind her as she stepped onto the Vermilion City landscape the following morning. In the harbor, she was met by Suicune once again, and she took this as a positive omen. She walked into Vermilion Gym and took out the trainers with ease. Lieutenant Surge recognized her immediately, and Winifred realized her childlike disguise was permanently washed away in this region. She skipped the formalities and defeated him with Laurium and Wildfire. His electric types didn't stand a chance, and she earned the Thunder Badge. She traveled up to Cerulean City after catching Magicae the Abra and had to assist the power plant in finding a stolen part. The Team Rocket Grunt was easy to defeat and he was sent packing. She caught Vilewing the Venomoth and Turk the Mankey before going to the Cerulean City gym. Misty was thrilled to see her, and when she got a good look at Sebastian, she asked to trade for him. Winifred, of course, declined. Their battle did not take long between Laurium and Tonitrue's efforts. 2 badges down and 6 to go. And now, previously on episode 12, Winifred was ready to keep her hot streak going in the Kanto region, and her team was just as fired up as she was. The gym she planned to go to next was in Fuchsia City, as her curiosity for who replaced Koga was far too great. As she traveled, she caught a Nidorino that she named after Professor Oak, and a Quagsire which she called Dopey, for obvious reasons. Fuchsia City had been quite the trek, so they stayed overnight at the Pokemon Center, where Winifred laid out their gym order. From Fuchsia, they would journey to Celadon City, then to Pewter. Saffron would follow, then Cinnabar Island, and back to Viridian City so she could be as close to the Indigo Plateau as possible. She figured she would be fighting another Pokemon League, so this was their best route. The next day, they charged headfirst into the still Poison-type gym and found Koga's successor to be his daughter. Winifred found this unsurprising, as most families liked to keep their businesses within the bloodline. However, she could tell just from looking at Janine that the girl was not yet skilled enough for this position. "All right, my first challenger of the day. Let's wrap this up quick so I can go head to the Safari Zone and search for more Pokemon. Crobat, you're up!" "Just like thy father," Winifred smirked. "Tonitru, you're up." "Wait, you know my father?" "I defeated him days ago," Winifred said confidently. "I am the new Johto League champion, child." "Oh, crap. Crobat, use Confuse Ray!" Crobat put the confusion status on Tonitru. "Tony, discharge!" Tonitru was unaffected by confusion and knocked out the Crobat with a single hit. Janine brought in Wheezing next, and Winifred decided to switch into Sebastian. Sebastian, while he did take a hit from Sludge Bomb and poison from Toxic, still managed to take out the Pokemon in 2 hits with Surf. Janine sent in her ace, a Venomoth, and Winifred switched again to Wildfire. The foe used Psychic, which didn't really do too much to the Typhlosion, but the flamethrower he executed in retaliation did. Venomoth went down, and in came Ariados, which met the same fate against Lava Plume. Her final Ariados was taken down by Lava Plume as well, and Janine stood against Winifred's mighty team with her mouth agape. Winifred complimented her trio on a job well done, then approached Janine. "You try too hard to follow in thy father's footsteps. Thine Pokemon are identical to his, thus the same strategy used against thee may be used against him. Find thy own path, and perhaps thou wilt be formidable," she instructed her. "Poison never really did feel like the right type for me," Janine admitted. She handed Winifred the soul badge. 3 down. "I think I'll try my hand at being a ground-type leader." "I wish thee luck," Winifred said as she pinned her badge to her cloak. She healed her Pokemon at the center and spent the better part of the day traveling up to Celadon City. She let her team get a little exercise in as she planned for her strategy for the Grass-type gym. Wildfire and Mavis would be her best choices for anything Erica had to throw at them. While she was working, Nim came over and settled down by her side. Tonitru sat down with her, and she smiled at them both. These 2 Pokemon had really carried her through some of the toughest battles during this trial. Perhaps if she kept up her streak, she'd be allowed to take more than 1 Pokemon home this time. She looked over at the other 4, and her heart started to ache as she thought of who she might bring with her. She didn't want to leave any of them. But now was not the time to think of such things. Winifred shook it off and called them in so they could go to the gym. "As I live and breathe, it is Winifred Sanderson coming to call. Misty and Surge weren't yanking my vines after all." "Hello, Erica," Winifred greeted her. "I'm here to request a rematch." "Then let's not waste any time," Erica smiled. "I have a new partner for you to fight. Jumpluff, let's go!" Jumpluff popped onto the field. "Your Dandelion will not last long against my own partner. Wildfire, on deck!" Her Typhlosion roared onto the battlefield. "Lava Plume!" Wildfire was faster than Jumpluff, and that lava plume was too powerful for it to survive. Tangela met with a flamethrower to the viney face and fell at Wildfire's feet. Erica sent in her own victory bell, and Winifred knew this Pokemon inside and out. Lava Plume was all it took. Erica's Gloom finally had evolved into Blossom, and it survived Wildfire's first attack, but then it set up Sunny Day and used Solar Beam. Wildfire braced himself and took some damage, but Winifred started laughing wickedly as Typhlosion smirked. "You fool! Dost thou not realize what you have done?" Winifred asked her, and the realization washed over Erica's face as Wildfire's flaming collar grew bigger. "Thou hast boosted my Typhlosion's power with the sunlight. Now, Wildfire, Flamethrower!" The Flamethrower attack blasted into Blossom at double the power, and the grass type fell in a sooty heap. Winifred ran up to Wildfire and hugged him as he had just defeated this gym all on his own. Wildfire licked her cheek in return and grinned. Erica nodded to herself and approached them. She handed over the rainbow badge with her compliments on such a well-raised and loving Typhlosion. Winifred already had 4 badges, and she wasn't done yet. That night, Nim made some room in the bed so Wildfire could sleep next to Winifred. Her mind reeled again as she thought about who she wanted to take back to Purgatory with her. Wildfire loved her very much, and she him, but she loved the others too. She didn't get much sleep until later in the night. Cutting through Diglett's cave was the fastest route to Pewter City, and she caught Molly the Diglett inside. In Pewter City, she was approached by a man who recognized her as the Johto League champion. He conferred on her a silver wing said to awaken Lugia, the deity of the sea. While Winifred was intrigued by the possibility of a second legendary Pokemon, she actually remained focused on her objective instead of chasing it down. She walked into the Pewter Gym with Laurium and Sebastian in her first and second slots, ready to take on Brock for a second time. "I was hoping you would make it here, Winifred. I've been wanting a rematch against you for quite some time now." "I'll take thy badge again, Brock. Don't think I won't," she challenged him. His Graveler went up against Laurium, whose Leaf Blade attack took him out before he could move. Laurium stood against Rhyhorn and won, Onyx and won, Kabutops and won, and his Amistar didn't stand a chance either. Laurium was too fast, too strong, and too well trained to be defeated. It was the fastest battle Brock had ever been part of, and Winifred smirked proudly as she stroked her victory bell, who rubbed against her side happily. "There's nothing to say other than I confer on you the Boulder Badge." Brock handed over his badge, and just like that, Winifred had 5 and only 3 left. "Keep up the great training on your Pokemon. My team is unstoppable," she declared proudly. As she left the gym, she came face to face with Suicune. It looked at her deeply in the eyes, then ran in the direction of Cerulean Cape. Winifred hopped on her broom and followed Suicune at its beckoning. It had wanted her to follow. When she arrived at Cerulean Cape, Suicune stood waiting for her. Eusine ran up a moment later, but Suicune growled angrily at him. "I see. You do not want me," he conceded, then turned to Winifred. "Suicune desires only to battle you, Winnie. Fulfill my dream for me," he said, apparently still seeing her as a young girl. The cloaking must still be active on those from Johto. "Suicune, thou hast ran from me before," she reminded her. "Thou art the Pokemon of my sister Mary. Art thou sure thou wants me?" Suicune nodded. "All right, then. I will oblige your request. Nim, prepare to fight." Winifred's Raticate opened with Super Fang that would half Suicune's health with each attack. Suicune fought back with Gust and then set up Rain Dance to boost its water attacks. Winifred stood strongly in the downpour of rain as she commanded Nim to attack with Super Fang again. She wasn't losing Suicune this time. Not after what she saw in the Hall of Fame. She had to keep this one safe for Mary. Winifred threw a Dusk Ball and watched it shake twice before it broke and Suicune kept fighting. She threw another, but it broke too. Winifred felt frustration rising within her, then caught sight of Suicune growing unhappy with this development. That was how Mary caught her. Winifred took a deep breath and tried to calm herself before pulling out an Ultra Ball. She locked eyes with Suicune and threw the ball. 1, 2, 3, click. Suicune has been registered to your Pokedex. This Suicune was once owned by Mary Sanderson and bore the name of Sarah, her Pokedex said. Sarah, you shall remain, Winifred said kindly as she held the Pokeball in her hand. You are a serene Pokemon to be approached calmly instead of forcefully. Thou hast taught me a thing or two about thy namesake, Sarah. She realized what she needed to do the moment she got back to Purgatory. Now, I think we are strong enough to continue defeating the gym leaders of Kanto. Let us pay Sabrina a visit in Saffron City. She flew down to the largest city in Kanto and spent the night at the Pokemon Center. Her confidence was sky high as she had 5 badges in her cloak, an undefeatable team, and 2 legendary Pokemon waiting for her in the meadow. She knew Nim was her best ally for the job with his crunch attack, but she also remembered that Sabrina could be very tricky. Last time her team wasn't that scary, but this trial in Kanto seemed different. Everyone was using type-specific Pokemon. If Sabrina was a psychic user, she could be in trouble. But her team had proven in the league that they could handle psychic types, so this wasn't going to be too much of a challenge for them. I sense overconfidence in you, Winifred Sanderson, Sabrina stated when Winifred arrived. You did not even train your Pokemon before coming to fight me, did you? We do not need to train more to defeat thee. My team has yet to falter, Winifred told her confidently, and Nim clicked his teeth in agreement. Even your Pokemon are overconfident. Pity. This battle will be hard on you, Sabrina said, then called out her first Pokemon. Go, Espeon. Nim, you know what to do, Winifred said, giving Nim a proud pat on the head before he ran onto the field. Headbutt, go for the flinch! Nim slammed his head into Espeon, knocking it back quite a ways and dealing a lot of damage. Espeon got to her feet and used Psychic, picking Nim up from the ground and slamming him back into it hard. He went into yellow health. Winifred gasped, but Nim gave her a confident look as he struggled to his feet. He wasn't done. Winifred called for the crunch attack, super effective against psychic types, and Nim chomped down on Espeon. They were ready to move to the next opponent when Espeon stood up with 1 health point left. A chill shot up Winifred's spine as Espeon used Psychic again. Nim was lifted from the ground, swung around, then slammed down hard in front of Winifred's feet. As the dust cleared, she saw he was dead. Winifred let out a painful cry as she picked him up and cradled him in her arms. Wildfire roared out of his Pokeball as Sabrina healed all of the damage Nim had done to her Espeon. Wildfire used Lava Plume and plunged it into yellow, but then Psychic did the same to him. Winifred put Nim back in his Pokeball and stood back up. She had to keep fighting for his honor. She called for Wildfire to use Lava Plume again as his Blaze ability kicked in and Espeon fell. Mr. Mime was the next opponent, and Winifred had to heal Wildfire. Psychic hit hard, and Wildfire had half of his health left. Winifred cursed under her breath, but she knew her team could do this, especially after Nim's fall. She healed him again as Mr. Mime set up Light Screen to boost the team's special defense. This was their opening. Wildfire charged forward with Flame Wheel and plunged Mr. Mime into yellow. Mr. Mime used Mimic and learned Flame Wheel, but to no avail as Wildfire took it out. Alakazam was the final opponent, and he was on the same power level as Wildfire. It used Reflect to boost physical defense as Wildfire hit with Flame Wheel. Alakazam used a powerful psychic attack, plunging Wildfire into yellow, but he managed to strike with Flame Wheel. Unfortunately, Winifred was suddenly backed into a corner, and she had no choice but to heal stall the Alakazam. She had to get rid of the psychic attacks. Wildfire was being flung all over the gym, taking damage and being exhausted as the cycle continued. Winifred felt horrible, but she didn't have any other choice, and she believed in Wildfire. Reflected worn off, but Alakazam kept on attacking. This is not what Winifred wanted it to do. Suddenly, the attack dropped Wildfire's special defense, and she had to figure out what to do. Winifred called Wildfire back and sent in Tonatru. If he could fight the champion by himself, He could handle an Alakazam. Wildfire laid down by Winifred's side and breathed heavily as her Ampharos charged in, only to be struck by Psychic and thrown into yellow. She healed him, but Alakazam attacked with a critical power Psychic. Winifred watched helplessly as Tonatru was lifted from the ground, thrown against every wall of the gym, crying out in pain, then flung down in front of her, dead. She cried out for her Ampharos and fell to her knees next to his body. Tonatru had faced 6 dragons and won, only to fall to an Alakazam. Winifred was regretting her decision to come here as she hugged him closely. Why was she always doing this? Charging in without preparation was her worst trait, and her Pokemon were paying for it now. Wildfire stood up, placed a paw on Winifred's shoulder, and gave her a strong nod. "You wish to keep fighting?" she asked, and he nodded again. "Then we will do so together. For them." She placed Tonatru in his ball and stood up again. "Why do you keep fighting when your Pokemon are dying?" Sabrina asked her. "Because they deserve to know their sacrifices are not in vain. Even if I have to use every potion I own, we will never give up the fight," Winifred declared, healing Wildfire again. Her Typhlosion roared. "Alakazam, Psychic," Sabrina ordered. Wildfire went flying twice more, but Alakazam was finally out of psychic attacks. "Wildfire, now's our chance!" Winifred declared as Reflect was put up. "Flame Wheel!" Wildfire slammed into Alakazam, pushing it down to yellow health. Alakazam was staring down the barrel of an angry Typhlosion as it used Skill Swap to switch abilities with him. Flame Wheel sent it into the red. Sabrina healed and Alakazam was struck again. It used Energy Ball, but Wildfire batted it off and rolled over it again. All it would take was one more hit. Alakazam tried to use Skill Swap, but Wildfire was too fast. "Wildfire, Lava Plume, and give it everything you've got!" Winifred ordered. Her Typhlosion came careening down on top of Alakazam with an explosion of fire, and when the smoke cleared, Wildfire stood on top of it with his foot on the Pokemon's throat. It had fainted. He roared proudly. Winifred and Wildfire ran to each other, and she grabbed him in the tightest hug she could muster as tears filled her eyes. Wildfire cried too as he snuggled up against her. Sabrina approached them, bearing the marsh badge. Winifred took it and pinned it to her cloak. Only 2 more to go. "You battled well, but not without loss. Remember this for the future," Sabrina told her. "I will not slack on their training ever again," she promised. "I owe that much to Nim and to Tonatru. Do not forget the gift the deity bestowed on you. Their fight may not be over yet," Sabrina told her, and Winifred gasped. Ho-Oh's black flame candle. She hurried out of the gym and over to a secluded spot. Winifred pulled the candle from her bag, set it in the grass, placed the Pokeballs of Nim and Tonatru on either side of the candle, and flicked a spark from her fingers. The spark caught the wick, and a black flame burst to life. It radiated an aura that poured into the 2 Pokeballs, and Winifred held Wildfire's paw as the other 3 watched alongside them. The aura poured in for several minutes until the flame went out. The Pokeballs burst open, revealing Nim and Tonatru yawning. They blinked a couple of times before seeing Winifred and tackling her in a loving embrace. She laughed and cried at the same time as her Pokemon were returned to her without a sacrifice. Everyone cheered for their comrades, and the team hugged. Winifred sat up in the grass and looked at them apologetically. "Never again will I allow thee to enter battle unprepared. We will train ourselves until we are ready to face the final gyms in this region. I promise thee I will not fail thee again," she swore, and that's just what they did. And now... Previously on the final episodes of Winifred Sanderson Plays Pokemon HeartGold Nuzlocke, Winifred had 2 gyms to go in the Kanto region, and her first stop was Cinnabar Island. However, to get there, she had to set out from Pallet Town. After journeying from Saffron to Pallet Town, Winifred camped with her Pokemon on the outskirts. She fished for an encounter and caught Kindling the Lantern. She slept next to Nim, using Wildfire as a pillow all night, while the others huddled around her. They were such wonderful companions, but she had to start thinking about who she was going to take with her to purgatory. This decision was going to be harder than the last time, as she had been with them from the beginning. Her mind raced while she was trying to sleep, but eventually she slept. The next day, with Sebastian pulling the boat, they sailed down to Cinnabar and saw an unexpected sight. The island was destroyed. She and Sebastian made land and looked around before. Winifred, Sanderson, is that you? Her heart jumped and she turned around slowly. Her eyes narrowed when she saw who the voice belonged to. I'd know that fiery red hair anywhere. Geoffrey Trask, she growled. Been a long time, Winifred. What brings you back to Kanto? He asked. Reclaiming my 8 badges to add to my 8 from Johto. I already claimed their champion title, so I decided to test my skills here again, she told him. Wow, shooting for 16, huh? Good for you. And Johto champion? You've been busy this last year. And You're looking at Viridian City's new gym leader, so once you defeat Blaine, I expect a great rematch if you want my badge, he challenged her. Well, before we talk about my beating you again, where is Cinnabar Gym? What happened here? Winifred gestured to everything. Wouldn't you know it? The volcano erupted 6 months ago and destroyed the whole island. We managed to get the Pokemon Center rebuilt, but that's all so far. Blaine moved his gym to the Seafoam Islands, so if you want his badge, you've got a little more sailing to do. But with a strong-looking Kingler like this one, I think you'll make it by afternoon. He actually complimented her Pokemon. Thou hast matured a great deal since we last met, she told him. I've had to do a lot of growing up since you left. Another champion came along by the name of Red, but he disappeared around Mount Silver 4 months ago. I've been helping out in his absence. If you get 16 badges, you're allowed to go to that wild area, but it's dangerous. So the only way I'll give you my badge is to prove you're stronger than last time. So go defeat Blaine, then come see me in Viridian City. I'm looking forward to our rematch. I won't disappoint you, Winifred promised. She sailed to the Seafoam Islands where she caught Daisy the Psyduck before finding the makeshift gym. She and her team knocked the gym trainers aside and faced Blaine. He was surprised to see her back, but accepted her challenge for a rematch. Winifred sent in Sebastian, who'd been training hard for this gym. He finally learned Crab Hammer. Sebastian one-hit KO'd Blaine's Macargo and Magmar with Surf, took a bounce attack from Rapidash, then knocked it out easily with one Crab Hammer. Winifred gladly took the volcano badge and pinned it to her cloak. Winifred hugged her sweet Kingler and he blew bubbles from his mouth happily. Blaine had never been through such a quick battle in his life. Winifred left the gym, then sensed something powerful below her feet. Her Pokedex informed her there was a legendary Pokemon dwelling in the cave. Winifred worked her way through the labyrinth and came face to face with the legendary Articuno. Hello, Articuno. May I engage you in a battle? Winifred asked politely. A battle she got, but Articuno refused to join her team. The Pokemon broke every ball Winifred threw, then struggled itself into submission. It fled, but Winifred was far less frustrated than she was before. Her team was good enough to not need a legendary. Besides, this was just the practice she needed before going to fight Geoffrey. She flew back to Viridian City with Mavis by her side, then slept overnight in the center. All night she relived her last battle with Geoffrey, during which her Meganium and Pidgeot had perished. Without Cobbler, they would have lost. Something told her this time would be different. As she approached Geoffrey in his gym, she steadied herself to keep her nerves at bay. Hello, Winifred. I was expecting you last night. I'm already disappointed, he smirked, and she scoffed. Even champions need to sleep. Of course I could beat thee in my sleep, she replied. Put your Pokemon where your mouth is, Geoffrey said. Executor, lay down the law. Wildfire, cause this tree a forest fire, Winifred declared. Her Typhlosion roared when he came onto the field. Eruption! Wildfire exploded with a blaze, and Executor fell in one hit. Geoffrey was stunned. My new team is more powerful than you could imagine, she told him. Right on! Pound her Typhlosion into the ground! Geoffrey sent in a behemoth of a Pokemon. Back, Wildfire! Sebastian, let's do this together! Sebastian burst onto the field and took a big hit from Stone Edge, but he stayed strong. Crab hammer! Now! Sebastian's crab hammer struck Rhydon in the gut and knocked him out. Jeffrey sent in Machamp, who went up against Mavis at first, but after she was hurt by Thunder Punch and Stone Edge, Winifred had to call in Laurium. Machamp and Laurium exchanged powerful blows, Winifred having to heal her victory bell. Eventually, Laurium overpowered Machamp and knocked him out. Arcanine was the next opponent, and Winifred opted for Wildfire to take it on. Wildfire used Earthquake, which almost took out Arcanine, but it kept fighting, and the two fire types exchanged blows and healed until Jeffrey switched it out. Jeffrey's Gyarados fought against Tonitru, but one discharge was enough to end the water type. Arcanine came back in, and Tonitru took a big hit from Flare Blitz, but his discharge finished it off. The last Pokemon was Pidgeot. Ironic, considering one of Winifred's previous partners. One Thunder Punch and one discharge ended the battle, and Jeffrey stood in defeat. Winifred's Pokemon stood behind her, and she smiled proudly. Jeffrey walked over to her, exhaling in a little bit of annoyance. "I didn't disappoint, I hope," she said. "You did not. You impressed me. This team of Pokemon is better than the last one you fought me with. Here, take this badge for them," he said, and handed her the 8th and final Kanto badge, the Earth Badge. Winifred pinned it to her cloak and got a call from Professor Oak, clearing her entry into Mount Silver. "Winifred, promise me you won't get lost like Red did. I liked him too, and I haven't seen him since he left. Just be careful." "I will. Keep up the good work here at your gym," she told him, and they parted ways. Together with her team, Winifred hiked Mount Silver's territory and made it there by dusk. She caught Elsa the Sneasel on the way and Gina the Graveler inside the mountain's cave. This had to be the place, the site of her last battle. It was time to train, and train she did. For an entire week, she trained her Pokemon against wild opponents and each other. She didn't know how strong they needed to be, so she trained them day in and day out. During their breaks, she fed and watered them until they were fueled up. She spent time with each one, telling them how much she cared about them and how much faith she had in them. Wildfire was the most pumped up out of all of them and grew the most in strength. It was as if he had something to prove. He'd been Winifred's constant ally during this journey, and he wasn't going to give up yet. Under the stars that night, Winifred watched her 6 Pokemon sleep and tried to feel in her heart who it was that should go home with her. She wanted to take them all, but she knew she couldn't. Only one was allowed. Her eyes wet a little as she heard Wildfire whine in his sleep, and Nim's whiskers twitched. Laurium and Mavis were snuggled up together, sleeping peacefully, while Tonitru and Sebastian slept back to back. She flipped open her Pokedex. "How close to the end am I?" "At the top of this mountain, you will face your final battle, after which you will either start over if you lose, or be sent back to Purgatory. And I can take a Pokemon back." "That is up to your proctor. Get some rest, Winifred. You will need it." It went dark. Easier said than done. It was a restless night until she felt Nim and Wildfire cuddle up to her. The presents brought her peace, and she finally entered a deep sleep. The next morning started the perilous hike up the mountain. Winifred's strength and resolve were put to the test during this climb, but her team was there to help. When the environment started to get snowy, Wildfire was there to keep her warm. It took all day to reach the top of the mountain, but at the peak, the moon and stars shone bright. Winifred's breath came out in puffs as she huddled under a cliff. What struck her as odd was the already burning fire and 2 logs for sitting. Winifred sat down to warm up and was almost thawed out when a young man about Jeffrey's age came around the corner. "Right on time, Winifred," he said kindly. "I've been expecting you. Thou art my proctor, I take it." "You got it. Name's Red. I'm sure Jeffrey told you about me." "He did. Thou art the champion of Kanto." "I was at one time. I'm also a good friend of your sister's," he said, sitting down across from her. Winifred raised a brow. "Which sister?" "Sarah," he replied. "I was her best friend during her first journey. She told me about you and Mary, whom I've also met. You have 2 really great sisters, you know." "I do know," Winifred sighed reflectively. "They mean everything to me." "So, why did you do it?" he asked her. "Why did you sacrifice them?" "I did not intend to. I was trying to protect them," she promised. "So why didn't you take 5 seconds to read the warning?" he asked, and for this she had no answer. Winifred swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd have an excuse for this one. If you wanted to protect them so badly, you would have read the warning. You're impatient. That's the problem I've noticed with you on this journey. You don't think things through all the way. You've gotten way better at it since setting out with your Cyndaquil. I think you've learned some things, but have you really taken the lessons to heart?" I think I have," she said. "Let's find out." "Battle me right now," Red challenged her. They stood and took their positions on the peak of Mount Silver. Winifred was ready, or she thought she was. Red had shaken her. He plucked a Pokeball from his belt and sent in his Pikachu. "This Pikachu's been with me for a long time. I've never used him against your family, but I think you're worthy of his power," Red stated. "Let me introduce you to my partner, then. Wildfire! Battle stations!" Winifred sent in her starter Pokemon. "Use Earthquake!" Wildfire was so fast his attack smacked into Pikachu, and the electric type fell in one hit. Red crossed his arms in acceptance and gave her a nod. "Not bad, but power isn't everything," he reminded her. "Blastoise, let's go! Wildfire, return! Go, Tonitru! Blastoise, Focus Blast!" Tonitru took a hard hit, but shook it off. Before Winifred could call an attack, Red was at it again. "Now use Blizzard!" Blizzard hit hard, plunging Tonitru into yellow. The Ampharos used Discharge and brought Blastoise down to red health. Red had to heal as Winifred prepared to attack, but looked at Tonitru and saw him panting. She remembered what Red said about thinking things through, so she also chose to heal. Soon they exchanged powerful blows again, and this time Tonitru had the upper hand. "Use Shockwave!" Winifred commanded, and Blastoise fell to Tonitru. "See? You thought that one through," Red told her. "Now go, Cobweb Jr.!" Red sent in Mary's Venusaur, who stomped his feet. This Venusaur was Mary's, so get ready. "Tonitru, return to my side! Mavis, I need thy help!" Her Crobat came in and flapped her wings excitedly. Cobweb Jr. used sleep powder and put Mavis to sleep. Winifred had Mavis wake up with the use of an awakening potion, but Mavis took a hard hit from Sludge Bomb. Winifred needed to get her out of the way and called for Fly. Mavis quickly got out of reach, then struck the Venusaur. Cobweb Jr. survived on 1 health point, then put Mavis back to sleep. Winifred woke her up again, but the hailing weather knocked out the Venusaur. Lapras was next, and Winifred had to swap into Tonitru, only for the electric type to be hit with a stab blizzard. He survived. "Your Ampharos is impressive," Red commented, "but my team isn't done yet." "Neither are we," Winifred said after healing her Pokemon. "Discharge!" Lapras was struck and flung into yellow health. Blizzard hit again, and Tonitru was hurt, but he stood tall. Discharge hit one more time and knocked it out. "Snorlax, take care of business!" Red sent in his behemoth. "Wildfire, it's on you!" Winifred sent in her Typhlosion. Snorlax used Blizzard, which barely tickled, and Wildfire retaliated with Flamethrower, but it only tickled the normal type. Snorlax used Crunch, both hurting enough to go into yellow health and lowering Wildfire's defenses. Winifred knew he was faster, but she needed to heal, so that's what she did. Snorlax used Crunch again, and it hurt, but not to the yellow line. She thought for a moment and used a battle item called X-Defend to boost Wildfire's defense. At this, Red smiled. Snorlax used Crunch again, but it didn't hurt much. Winifred healed, and Crunch hit again, but his defenses were doing very well. Wildfire struck with strength and barely made a dent. Then the unthinkable happened. "Snorlax, use Giga Impact!" Red commanded. Wildfire braced himself as the enormous behemoth slammed into him. Wildfire cried out as he was flung across the snowy ground and stopped at Winifred's feet. He was dead. Winifred cried for him to come back, but there was no way to heal him. The tears in her eyes stung from the cold wind, but before she could make a move, Sebastian burst out of his ball and took fighting stance. He wanted revenge, and Winifred trusted him to fight in Wildfire's stead. "Okay, Sebastian, we can do this together," she said as Red healed his Snorlax. Her Kingler nodded to her confidently. "Use Crabhammer!" Sebastian slammed his water-cloaked claw into Snorlax and threw it into the air. Snorlax was so shocked he couldn't move. "Sebastian, after after it!" Winifred shouted, and he jumped into the air. "Crab hammer!" Sebastian slammed his powerful claw into Snorlax's back and slammed it into the earth, causing the mountain to shake so hard an avalanche followed. Sebastian stood on Snorlax's back, clicking his claw in victory. He knocked it out. Winifred was shocked at his demonstration of skill as he jumped in front of her protectively. It was like Cobbler in the league all over again. Red smiled at her as if he knew how this battle was going to end. "Don't let up, Kingler. You have one more opponent. Go, Charizard!" Red sent in a Charizard. "Air Slash! Crabhammer with all you've got!" Winifred yelled. Sebastian dodged Air Slash, ran up to Charizard, and uppercut the fire type. Charizard hit the ground, defeated, and Winifred won the battle. She ran forward and hugged her Kingler for saving the entire team from Snorlax. All of her Pokemon burst from their balls, including a revived Wildfire, as the Pokemon from her meadow joined her on the peak. Red couldn't help clapping for her as she stood up. "You did well, Winifred," he told her. "You raised this team well, and I saw you calculating your moves. Keep this lesson in your heart, and I think you'll earn some redemption. Now, it's time for you to go." "What about my Pokemon? May I take one with me?" Red took her Pokedex and looked some stuff over, then smiled. "You can take two. Your journey went very well." Winifred lit up and turned to her Pokemon. "I must take Nim. He did a lot of heavy lifting for us," Winifred said, and her Raticate ran over to her, chattering. Now was the hard decision. Who else? She looked at everyone, and they'd all earned it, but it was Sebastian who pushed Wildfire forward. Everyone nodded at her, and she smiled at them before hugging them all goodbye. "Wildfire, let's go home." She, Nim, and Wildfire were lifted into the air and started turning to dust. "Red, please care for my Pokemon, like you've clearly done for my sisters," she pleaded. "Of course, Winifred. Give them my regards." "I will." She looked at her Pokemon again. "Goodbye, everyone." Everything went black. When she awoke, she was in her room with Cobbler at the foot of her bed. Wildfire and Nim were on the floor, asleep. She sat bolt upright, realizing she was home, then hurried out of her room and down the stairs where Mary and Sarah were waiting with smiles. The group hug that followed was so long it felt like an eternity. "We're so glad you're home, Winnie," Mary said. "Thou hast passed with flying colors," Sarah exclaimed. "We are so impressed." "Thank these sisters, and I want to apologize to you, Sarah." Winifred looked at her, and Sarah was shocked. "I will learn to think things through, and I will not hurt your chances during your next trial. I promise," she said. "I am sorry I was so angry," Sarah said. "We will work better together." Mary smiled at their progress. "May we see your new Pokemon?" she asked. "Oh, yes!" Winifred gestured to Wildfire and Nim. "This is my Typhlosion and Raticate. What about the two of you?" "Oh, this is Allison, my Ambipom, and Honey, my Ursaring." Sarah introduced hers, and Winifred gasped at the giant bear. "They are well behaved." "I hope so." She gulped. Suddenly, a small Pokemon shaped like a star floated in front of Winifred. "Winnie, Winnie, Winnie!" he said, and Winifred jumped back. "It spoke!" she gasped. "This is my Jirachi Bilious," Mary introduced him. "It is a long story." "We have time," Winifred smiled. Except they didn't. And to see how their group trial went, check out the Sanderson sisters play Until Dawn. The end.